Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Normal America Show, host Rob Noer. Glad to see you all again. Been since last Thursday. Had some wedding shenanigans this weekend, so quite the week for me. Quite the week. So it's good to be back. Should be streaming about every day this week. So got a big debate lined up Wednesday. I think that's now changed to 7 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. on Wednesday. So 7 p.m. Eastern time, I'll be debating economist, I believe, Noah Smith. It should be fun. Wick's going to be moderating it. And then maybe I saw Robert, you mentioned John Ward. I was in contact with him. He's supposed to get in touch with me this week. We're supposed to be doing an afternoon show at some point. So we'll see. I got a bunch of rando life stuff lined up, but I think I'll be able to make time. We should be able to make it work. And yeah, it's been... I got a little bit of a shave. I need to actually shave. When I left you last Thursday, I was just ending the show and my internet went out, so I didn't bother to get back on. But it's been quite the weekend. For the first time in a long, long time, I went to the doctor about my back that's been hurting, and they believe I have a herniated disc, is what's going on, which I've probably had for 3 months now, which was probably not smart to not go to the doctor. So I've been put on a mild steroid and a muscle relaxer, which I'm not really taking. And I got to go in for like x-rays, MRIs, all that good stuff here. Well, that's the question. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing until the doctor tells me. I could do some yoga stuff. It'll hurt, but if it makes it better, it makes it better. But I want to wait and see what the doctor, because that's the last thing I want to do is like start stretching around and then them being like, "What are you doing, you moron?" Yeah, that's one of the things they talked about: decompression therapy, physical therapy. So we'll see. I'm not too bummed about it, to be honest. That's life. If that's the most I'm dealing with in a negative way, I'm okay. So it's just something I have to go and deal with, though. It's like a little bit time consuming. And working as much as I do and everything, it's hard to find time for that stuff. But I need to get it in order. And of course, it sucks for my wife because like now I'm not supposed to. I was told not to lift anything more than a gallon of milk until they figure out what's going on. So, which is good for me, but sucks for my wife. This was supposed to be yard work week, but I took the week off work. Unfortunately, I still got to go into work, even on my week off work. But it's a good thing. So this Thursday, I am going to, our company sets up with a bunch of our clients, going to a baseball game, and I'm one of the people that gets to go to that and help out with everything. It's always a lot of fun. So we'll be going to watch the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I think it'll be fun. Other than that, everything's going well. I had a wedding this weekend. Instead of a flower girl, they had me, and I was the beer man. So instead of throwing flower petals, I came out and threw beers to everyone. It was a lot of fun. Got to come out to some James Brown. Unfortunately, wasn't too much James Brown-esque dancing, seeing as how the herniated disc. But all that's behind us. The wedding went well. Got to hang out with old friends. A lot of fun. Now I'm back, baby. Like I said, we're trying to plan some stuff out. I got some stuff in the works. Like I said, I got this debate Wednesday. I'll be honest, I should prepare for that debate. The wedding was very good, Jeff. I enjoyed myself. Courtney enjoyed herself. But it was good to be back. Hanging out with the Hankster last night and today. He's a maniac. He's fun. We were watching the old cartoon show Gargoyles, which I used to watch like before getting ready to school every morning. We'd watch an episode of Gargoyles, me and my brother. It's funny because some of the voices you recognize, like the one gargoyle is his voiced by the guy that does Patrick Star. What's his, Bill Fabergacki or whatever. So it's kind of funny to listen to him like as an action guy. Yeah, I debate Destiny again. Maybe I'll call him today. We'll see. Yeah, Gargoyle's solid. Oh yeah, I can't. I'm on Twitch. Yeah. Yeah, I'll debate Destiny. It don't matter. I'm thinking this debate Wednesday should be good. I think it's someone that's actually going to... It'll be interesting. It's someone who's going to be heavy data driven. They're going to be talking a lot about the economic numbers and saying that Biden's doing a good job, which he's not. And there's ways to manipulate the numbers to make it sound like he's doing good, but he's not. Everyone can see it. So I should do some research to look into these numbers. We'll see. We'll see if I get around to it. I'm a good debater. I'd be a great debater if I ever actually put any work into it. But yeah, that's... And then I had got to reach out to some people. I had an idea to do sort of a show with a left-winger. And was thinking of doing a weekly show. I had a couple people respond to me, which I haven't reached out yet because I've been just busy with life. So possibly I'll set up a show with some of them this week. I wanted to do a big show this week, like an 8-hour show. But unfortunately, I think this physical therapy doctor business is going to cut into that. Wages aren't outpacing inflation, though, even to the Keynesians. But yeah. Yeah, check out that Gargoyle show. It's fun. What's weird, there was like those... I don't know that there's many... Maybe I'm wrong. Are there action cartoons now? Maybe I'm just missing it. There's anime, which is obviously from like a Japanese influence. But you remember, you used to have like the Batman animated series, and Gargoyles was like in that vein. It was like sort of... They were kids shows, but they could be enjoyed by an adult, I think. Yeah, do you like that Pelosi debate at Oxford? Pretty good. All they have is demagoguery. All of them. That's all they have. Yeah, if you're populist, you're against democracy. Literally, populism is the sticking up of people and giving voice to the people. That's anti-democratic. That's the Pelosi argument. Yeah, X-Men 97 I haven't seen. I've heard it's good. Then I've also heard it's woke. But that's one thing. Listen, don't get me wrong. I'm firmly on the side of culturally the pendulum needing to swing back. But, I mean, sometimes it swings back, even for me, where I roll my eyes. Not everything's woke. If there's just a gay character in it or a female lead, doesn't make it woke. I get that we're tired of having that shoved down our throats, but I'm just saying. But I don't know, maybe I can't comment on X-Men 97. I haven't watched it. Gorka versus... Oh, I didn't even know Gorka debated Destiny. Yeah, I think a lot of these big talking heads don't do the greatest when they're debating someone that's like an online debater like Destiny. I don't think Glenn Greenwald did that amazing. He did okay. But what do we want to talk about? We talk about this Alvin Bragg case. Yeah, I saw that, Robert. I just saw that before I came up here. I'll be honest, I don't watch everything my son watches. On television, I pretty much do. Well, obviously, I'm not here a lot of the week. But he watches his tablet a lot, and he likes like the YouTube Kids videos on there. And I don't see all of that, I'll be honest. I should probably pay more attention. That particular Jurassic Park cartoon we've watched, I never saw that part of it, but he likes dinosaurs. I don't know. It's a bit insidious, but yeah, there is. It's called Camp Cretaceous. It's definitely aimed at older kids, though, in their defense. I mean, it's like dinosaurs eating people and stuff. And I tried to put it on for Hank once, and it was a little bit scary for us. Because to Hank, dinosaurs are still fun. They're not, like, really scary. So a lot of times, he's seen dinosaurs in shows like Storybots. Or he watches one, now it's called Bad Dinosaur, which is... I actually like the Bad Dinosaur, the little I've seen of it. It's non-verbal. So there's no talking. It reminds me of like sort of the slapstick-esque Looney Tunes, where it's just like these dinosaurs, getting into wacky adventures, coconuts falling on their heads and stuff. but they're like kind of funny. They're not like scary dinosaurs. This particular Jurassic World show is definitely dinosaurs escaping and trying to eat people. Yeah, Land Before Time he's seen. Though obviously there's like some scary dinosaurs in those, but in general it's friendly dinosaurs. So we haven't really watched that, the one that people were talking about, where the two girls on the show end up declaring that they're dating and make out with each other or something. Yeah, I haven't seen that, the dinosaurs sitcom, in quite some time. Thoughts on the Ivan Raiklin video that went viral? I saw that there was a video, but I didn't watch it. I also didn't watch the Harrison Butker speech that everyone's been talking about. That's how busy I've been. I've done very little. I did see the Pelosi debate. I read some of the transcripts of the testimony in front of Congress about this guy Mirren, who was working under the NIH. We'll see if we can find some of these. Gorka mop the floor with them. Yeah. Maybe we'll check it out here at some point. Now, I will say, I think Gorka is a little too hawkish for me. If I remember. I think Gorka is a give money to Ukraine guy, and which isn't my jam, but whatever. But I did want to talk about some of the Fauci stuff, and I mean, it's quite insane. The one guy, what was his name? I can go back. It's been days since I read this. It's a problem with not streaming every day. Moran's. So Moran's was this assistant to Dr. Fauci, and he sends this email to Peter Daszak. Here, Daszak's the guy from EcoHealth Alliance. You'll remember EcoHealth Alliance is the group that was being paid by Francis Collins, or by the NIH under Dr. Fauci, to do gain of function research, which we're now finding out that's exactly what they did at the Wuhan lab. And Daszak was also the person who penned the letter that then 47 scientists signed off on initially, that said that it was a crazy racist conspiracy, that it could have came from a Wuhan lab. So this person, Morenz, who's the senior advisor to Fauci, writes in the email to Daszak, I learned from our Freedom of Information Act lady here how to make emails disappear after I'm FOID'd. So I think we're all safe. Plus, I deleted most of the earlier emails after sending them to Gmail. Also talks about using Telegram. Now, if this sounds confusing, Dr. Fauci, Peter Daszak, and a bunch of these other people that were telling us that it's impossible that this could have came from lab in Wuhan. It was racist to think so. That we had to trust them. That was actively working with social media companies to censor opinions about COVID that they didn't like. The senior advisor to Fauci is bragging in an email how he was deleting emails and getting around Freedom of Information Act requests so people couldn't see their actual emails. Vita with the super chat, thanks so much. $2 says, am I doing any prep for Wednesday's debate? Maybe. I haven't yet. I should. It's going to be a big economic debate, and so there's going to be a lot of data. I could see this already. So I should be looking into those numbers. Do I say Wuhan like China? It's funny. I'm going to give him out. If Noah Smith's watching or any of his followers watching, I'm going to give him an out. And the out I'm going to give him is, do you really want to get into these economic numbers? Are you going to try to ignore the reality that the economy is a disaster for the vast majority of this country? Are you going to try to do that? Are you going to try to massage the numbers? Because if that's what you want to do, we'll dive in. And that's what he's going to want to do. He's going to want to say, well, actually, the CHIPS Act bring back manufacturing. And if you look at here, blah, 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 blah. Gene Epstein. I'll have to check him out. So I should do some research. But, of course, that's what we're going to do. I guess the topic is, has the Biden presidency been good for the country? And what I was told... Get a notification. I got your message there, Itchy. We'll see. Maybe we'll play that video. Let me see exactly what the topic is. I'll tell you. Has Biden's presidency been good for America? 3 parts: foreign policy, domestic policy, and a general section. So, that's what the topic's supposed to be. Now, getting back to Morenz here, I'm pretty sure that's a crime, intentionally ignoring Freedom of Information Act requests and deleting stuff. Yeah, I'll have to check it out, Nate. Gene Epstein, I'll look him up. Gene Epstein. All right. Yeah, I'll check some of that out. So, well, the problem is, like, I think even my opponent will admit, this happened when I debated Destiny back in 2021. If you remember when I debated Destiny on Biden, one of the things he said was like, well, the Infrastructure Act, that's what Biden did that's good. But how do we know? It had just passed. The same as the CHIPS Act. Like, all that really says is, we're going to spend a ton of money. But what are the results of it? Like, I could do that. I could go out and be like, here's $1 trillion, and we're going to send it to American workers. Well, you're not going to know if it went to the workers or if it did well for quite some time. And the problem with the CHIPS Act is what my opponent, he wrote an article, I read it. What he's going to say is, well, it created the incentive to build all these factories in this country, although it hasn't really hired anyone yet. But we're hoping it will in the future. Okay. Yeah, sure, JoJo. I saw that too, MR25, so I'm sure we'll talk about that. So that's sort of the problem. If you guys want, we could look at that now. So the reason that Wick reached out to me to see if I'd do this debate was because he wanted my opinion on this article that Noah wrote. And we could, if you want to check it out, let's check it out. This will be the person I'm debating, Noah Smith, the positive case for Joe Biden. So we'll just go through it. It's politics season in America, so I'm going to write a bit about politics. Trump was doing very well in the polls a few months ago, but Biden has surged lately. And both polls and betting markets now have candidates essentially even. Back in January, I wrote a post making the case against voting for Trump. Trump's chaotic and dictatorial nature by itself is easy enough of a reason to cast a vote for Biden in November. But I think that Biden has been a good president. Go away. In his own right. So in this post, I want to explain why, unless something major changes, I plan to vote for Biden instead of simply against Trump. First, he says, I am not a Biden shill. In my post about Trump, I started off with a whole section explaining why I don't have Trump derangement syndrome. In fact, Trump did a number of good things in his first term, and I gave him credit for these. So I want to start this post off with something similar. I want to explain why I'm not a simple knee-jerk Biden supporter who tries to justify everything Biden does. In fact, I have plenty to complain about. For one thing, I think Biden has done too much deficit spending. The American Rescue Plan of 2021 had a lot of good stuff in it. For example, the expanded child tax credit. But it was fundamentally based on the mistaken idea that the country's economic situation in 2021 was similar to the situation in 2020. The pandemic was still raging in 2021, but people had stopped hiding in their houses. The economy was already recovering. The CARES Act of 2020 was basically a bailout rather than a stimulus bill. The point was to make sure that people weren't financially ruined during the time of social distancing. But because people were already spending again in 2021, the ARP acted as more like a stimulus bill, put a bunch of money in America's pockets, and this time they went right out and spent it, along with some of the money they'd saved up from the CARES Act. That accelerated the recovery, but it also led to higher inflation. The U.S. was already suffering from major supply chain disruptions, and then a brief oil price shock in 2022. The extra cash provided by the ARP poured a bit of fuel on that fire, contributing modestly to 2 years of declining real incomes for most Americans. As some of the spending of the ARP consisted of health insurance subsidies, which is likely to push up prices in that industry without alleviating supply constraints or controlling costs. Biden exacerbated all this with the student loan cancellation. The plan was extremely expensive and will continue to be expensive going forward. It was not something we needed to do. Instead, it was an attempt to win over the lefty youth. Despite the fact that student loans aren't a big priority for most young people, and lefty kids now hate Biden over Palestine anyway. In general, Biden's main domestic policy failure is that he's too willing to throw subsidies at overpriced serviced industries like health, education, childcare, and so on without any attempt to control costs in these industries. This is rooted in the new progressive consensus that care jobs represent the future of work, and that by subsidizing these industries, we can both make them cheaper for the average American and also create lots of jobs. Without measures to increase supply and improve efficiency, this pushes up prices, and in the area of interest, high interest or debt. In addition, Biden's a very old man, although I think he seems more mentally acute than people give him credit for. And more mentally acute than Trump, who is only 3 years younger and tends to ramble and fall asleep in court. Age definitely does take a toll. This manifests in Biden occasionally saying foolish things and relying on outdated stereotypes, such as when he labeled key allies Japan and India xenophobic. Also, Biden's age probably means less centralized leadership on economic policy. So I'm not a Biden shill. There's plenty that could be improved about his presidency, and the above is by no means an exhaustive list. But the positives strongly outweigh the negatives, so let's talk about those. All right. So he has 3 areas. Number 1, throughout my entire life, Biden made industrial policy a reality. Throughout my entire life, I've heard Americans talk about the need to revive American manufacturing. First the Rust Belt and then the China shock hollowed out the manufacturing workforce. Employment plunged and output stagnated. And yet neither Bush nor Obama seemed to have any plan to how to make it happen. Trump talked a big game about bringing manufacturing back to America, but his signature initiative, the tariffs, didn't make any headway in terms of reshoring. Trump's attempt to harangue American companies into no longer shipping jobs overseas and his bungled attempt to get Foxconn to build a factory in rural Wisconsin were even less effective. There was no perceptible increase in factory construction, manufacturing output, or employment. Then came Biden with a pair of landmark bills, the somewhat misnamed Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Chips and Science Act. He enacted America's first real systemic manufacturing-oriented industrial policy since the early 90s and possibly since World War II. A massive factory construction boom began almost immediately. So you can see the chart that he says here. This is total construction spending manufactured in the United States by industry, new industry building construction. And so what this shows is the grays indicating recessions. Other than that, you'll see just normal. And so here Biden comes into office. And you can see that there's a spike. So nearly double where we were in Trump of factories being built. Note the graph is adjusted for the cost of new industrial building construction. So this graph of this isn't inflation. It's a huge increase in actual construction. You'd also see a big bump in construction employment in the non-residential sector, despite the commercial real estate bust. What kind of factories are being built? The spending's mostly on chips and batteries. So you can see computer electronical is where manufacturing spending is going. So this is clearly a result of Biden's 2 spending bills. Now, I don't know that it is clearly a result of those. I think it could also be a result of seeing writing on the wall that there's going to be a more antagonistic front with China going forward. And so there's going to be another option. But it is something that I need to look into. Anyways, we'll continue. It's still the early days, of course. In fact, manufacturing output and employment haven't risen yet. Building factories takes time. There are still many hurdles yet to overcome, and it's a learning process. But finally, a president actually did something to restore U.S. manufacturing. After all those years of talk, someone did something, and that someone was Joe Biden. The bigger question, of course, is, was it the right thing to do? Plenty of people say we shouldn't focus on manufacturing at all, that we should step back and let the free market do its work, and the industrial policy is wasteful. We won't know for a while whether they're right. What we do know is that China is ramping up its manufacturing machine to an incredible degree. In the face of that competition, we could either simply stop making anything in tradable manufactured goods and let our main rival do it all, while we specialize in agriculture and finance, or we could try to fight back. Fight back is the obvious correct opinion. The usefulness of an economy is not merely measured in dollars and profit. Of industrial economy is absolutely necessary in order to sustain a modern military that can keep us safe in the face of unprecedented external threats. Finance and agriculture cannot by themselves defend us against Chinese drones, missiles, and warship. Only manufacturing can do that. Semiconductors and batteries are incredibly crucial to the defense manufacturing. Chips are essential for every military device, especially precision weapons and batteries, power many of those drones that are taking the battlefield. And of course, batteries are essential for fighting climate change too. In other words, Biden picked exactly the right industry to support. In our success or our failure in supporting those industries, we yield priceless insights for future efforts. Meanwhile, the impact of this factory spending is widely distributed throughout the country. New battery factories in mostly the South and Midwest, while a bunch of new chip factories in Arizona, Texas, upstate New York, and the Mountain West. It means industrial policy won't even just pour investment into a few coastal superstar cities, as was the norm for previous decades. This is the most consequential change in U.S. economic policy since Reagan. Trump may have been the one to smash the old free trade laissez-faire consensus, but Biden is the first to start building something in its place. Now, I would argue that the key question is, or the key section, still the early days. In fact, manufacturing output and employment haven't risen yet. It takes time. There's still hurdles to overcome. It's a learning process. Was it the right thing to do? Plenty of people say we shouldn't. We won't know for a while whether they're right. Now, remember, his argument is going to be that the good has far outweighed the bad. So, for example, when we're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, and we're talking about the massive spending that we've done, and the slowing actual real wage growth and real earnings of households in this country, you're telling me that that's outweighed by this? And the problem is, if you spend trillions of dollars in any industry, you could build a lot of stuff. Like, if I was president and spent $1 trillion on building auto garages, there'd be a lot of construction. So I'm unpersuaded that that's a... I don't think... I'll be honest, it's one thing that you could say that Biden's done that's not necessarily on its face terrible like most of his presidency. Like, he passed the CHIPS Act. Okay. That outweighs all of the other stuff we're seeing? Let's continue. This is the best one. Biden's mostly good on foreign policy. We'll just read it. In the memorable words of Xi Jinping, the world is facing greatest changes unseen in a century. The rise of China has changed absolutely everything. Suddenly, aggressive authoritarian countries like Russia, Iran, and North Korea are no longer rogue states. They're members of an axis whose economic, industrial, and democratic heft rivals that of the U.S. and all of its allies combined. In the face of the new axis, any U.S. president would struggle, but Biden has done extremely well given the circumstances. First, he got us out of it. This is the best. Right? First, he got us out of Afghanistan. He's calling the Afghanistan withdrawal a good thing. Now, I agree that pulling out was the right thing to do, but it was done in a terrible way. Our forces have mostly been drawn down under Obama. After the death of bin Laden, Trump kept a skeleton force there and basically kicked the can down the road. Biden knew that being enmeshed in a forever war that had little hope of transforming Afghanistan into a stable country, much less a liberal democracy, was crippling the U.S. ability to respond to much more important threats. Therefore, he did the right thing and withdrew. The withdrawal was executed well, with the only U.S. casualties being 13 victims of an ISIS bombing. The only real blemish in the whole operation was the U.S. refusal to admit more Afghan translators and other collaborators as refugees. There you have it. That'll be a good part of the debate. Went really well, the withdrawal. It was executed well. With regards to China, Biden's done more than any other president, by far. Stupid gaffes notwithstanding, he's beefed up our alliances and quasi-alliances with India, Japan, the Philippines, and Australia, reinvigorated the Quad, and created the AUKUS, the Philippines in allowing the U.S. to build bases on its soil for the first time in many years. Bases that are very close to Taiwan could help defend the island from invasion. Modi's visit to the U.S. was an epochal moment in the U.S.-India relations. Of course, much more needs to be done in order to forge a regional alliance capable of deterring China, but Biden has made important moves in the direction of that regional alliance, which neither Trump nor Obama did. Biden has also dramatically strengthened U.S. export controls on the Chinese semiconductor industry. These won't stop China's progress, but they will slow it down and give America a fighting chance to preserve a world where the chips that tell American weapons where to strike aren't all made in China. Export controls were a Trump innovation, but Biden has scaled them up to have real teeth. It's on Ukraine, though, that Biden did the best. Vladimir Putin's decision to violate the norm against international conquest has prevailed since World War II, and there was a watershed moment, the end of the post-World War II period, at the beginning of the new era of great power competition and instability. Had Russia been able to overrun Ukraine, it would have now been menacing the rest of Europe. But just because Joe Biden rushed a ton of weapons to Ukraine, the Ukrainians were able to defend their country, expel the Russians from about half the territory they seized, and turn the war into the stalemate it is now. Russia's casualties have been enormous, 450,000 dead and wounded by last estimate, plus many thousands in armored vehicles destroyed. Meanwhile, Biden's sweeping sanctions and quick diplomacy ended up pushing Europe to unite more than it has, well, possibly ever. Swindle and Finland even joined NATO. Whereas Trump wanted to withdraw from NATO and threatened to let Russia conquer allied countries, Biden under the alliance has become more vigorous, unified, and purposeful than it's been since the 1980s. Sweden and Norway even emerged from neutrality to join. Thus, Russia, instead of conquering Ukraine and facing a divided, factitious Europe with its Soviet-era military hardware intact, now holds only a fifth of Ukraine and faces a united Europe with much of its Soviet inheritance lying in ruins. That's due to the valiance of the Ukrainian defenders and the financial aid of Europeans, but Biden's timely commitment to weapons played a decisive role. For that alone, Biden is the best foreign policy president since Bush. And the U.S. support for Ukraine has another salutary effect. It's a wake-up call about the fact the U.S. defense industrial base is badly atrophied. The U.S. does not have manufacturing capability to defend against China, but thanks to our Lend-Lease support for Ukraine, we now realize that we need to build it, and some efforts are actually happening ahead of schedule. This isn't nearly enough, of course. We need to build lots more missiles and ships, not just artillery shells. We're going to be able to deter China, but it's a start. Shows the U.S. isn't entirely still asleep in our military production deficiencies. Under Trump, we would probably still be asleep. And then there's the Gaza war. As I've said, I think Biden's been too conciliatory to Netanyahu and too reluctant to disengage from the Middle East and pivot to Asia. But having that been said, Biden has done a better job than Trump would have done in terms of navigating a sensible middle path through the thorny conflict. Of course, the leftists give Biden no credit for this. Basically, in foreign policy, both ends of the horseshoe, the extremists of the MAGA right and the decolonial left, have united against Biden. That's a strong sign that he's doing something right. Right. That's number 2. Biden's been a decent steward of the economy and of public safety. Finally, we get to the bread and butter issue that affects daily lives. The economy is the thing that many voters are still mad at Biden about. 2 years of real income declines will at least left a bad taste in anyone's mouth. And although some of the factors causing inflation were beyond Biden's control, his spending probably did exacerbate the problem a bit. But Biden did a lot to help quell inflation, too. First, most importantly, he reappointed Jerome Powell as Fed chair. Many progressives have worried that Powell was too hawkish because of recession with too many interest hikes, but Biden stayed the course, and it turned out to be the right move. Powell's rate hikes helped bring inflation down, not all the way down to the 2% target, but enough so that real wages have started to grow again and are now the pre-pandemic trend. In fact, Biden did one other thing to help bring down inflation. He increased oil production. Although he came into office expecting to curb fracking in the name of the climate, the Ukraine war prompted an about-face. Biden opened up drilling, and the U.S. now produces more oil than any other country it has in the history of the world. Cheaper oil doesn't make gasoline cheaper, although it does do that. It allows kinds of businesses to move goods around more cheaply, allows to produce more cheaply, which lowers inflation. So Biden did 2 things to stop inflation: reappointed Powell and ensured cheap, plentiful oil. Both of those were in the face of pressure from his own party and showed a lot of courage and leadership. Less spending on health insurance and student debt would have taken a little off the edge inflation in 2021, but Biden's action did bring down inflation in 2022 and 2023, outweigh the mistake. And Biden administration just casually stopped a banking crisis in its tracks back in 2023. It was such a flawless victory no one remembers. Now the U.S. economy is humming on all cylinders. Wages are rising, growth is fast, productivity is growing, young people are doing better than their parents, wealth is up, employment is great, and so on. We'll get to all of that. This is Goldilocks situation won't last forever, but it took some skillful macroeconomic management to get us here, and Biden and the people in his administration deserve some of the credit. Another big thing Biden got right was crime. Violence surged under Donald Trump in 2020. Many feared we'd see a repeat of the 70s when crime stayed at sky high for 2 decades, but under Biden, the murder rates fell dramatically. And We know why that is, because now they're no longer collecting the data. The trend's continuing 2024. Does Biden get credit for this? Well, yes. In 2020, many progressives were calling you to fund the police. Biden fought against this idea from day one. In fact, he consistently supported hiring a lot more cops, together with various other measures to curb violence. And in fact, more cops have been hired. There are now more police working in the United States than ever before. Cops do help prevent crime. Sorry. So Biden's steadfast role, blah, blah, blah. So on the deletions Americans most, Biden's definitely been more effective and responsible leader, and he's done the same thing time as he strengthened the U.S. alliance, halted Russia in its track. Not bad for an 81-year-old. Yeah, so that's the case that we'll be debating against. Thank you for the gifted sub. I really appreciate it. So that's the case we'll be arguing. That debate's going to be Wednesday at 7 p.m. So. I definitely, if I get time to prepare, I definitely want to prepare. The two things that I want to look into the most are the economic numbers, particularly because he's going to try to claim that. Thank you so much, Ross, for the sub. I appreciate it. He's going to try to claim that the numbers are now turning for the better. Okay, once. So this is from James Varmy, May 14th, 2024. Americans be forgiven for suffering whiplash regarding law and order. In recent weeks, the Biden administration, many news outlets, including the USA Today and The Hill, have touted declines in violent crime statistics that argue that America is becoming a safer place. Right now, with 2023 figures in early 2024, the trends are pointing down in a positive direction. Jeff Asher, whose New Orleans-based data analytics is developing its own real-time crime index. Conservative outlets, including City Journal and the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal, assert that minor declines in headline crimers like homicides fail to capture what's really happening in the U.S. From 2017 to 19, the U.S. had an average of 16,000 and change homicides a year. 2021-22, the country saw considerably more bloodshed with an average of more than 22,000. Even if the 2023 numbers drop slightly, it still represents a large increase. Many criminologists say this illustrates one of the problems with the official numbers at the center of the public debate. They give a distorted impression of the true levels of crime. They note that the crime stats have become notoriously incomplete in recent years. In some years, many big cities did not report their numbers to the FBI, and there are such wide discrepancies in these tallies that the picture they provide is more blur than clarity. Declining arrest rates show police response times to 911 calls also help explain why polls show that Americans believe crime is rising. The experts say the numbers only give some sense of lawbreaking, while most Americans, the vast majority of whom are not crime victims in a given year, are influenced by the larger media driven. For decades, the traditional gold standard for criminologists was the FBI Uniform Crime Reports, annual compilations by the Bureau of Stats provided to it by state and local law enforcement agencies. The FBI's data, which currently shows declines in several criminal categories, especially homicide, provide the basis for many stories arguing that in terms of crime, the U.S. situation is improving. But the FBI statistics aren't what they used to be, according to several criminologists who pointed out gaps in coverage and apparent errors. The problem began in 1988 when the Bureau began to move towards a complex new system of reporting, the National Incident-Based Reporting System. It promised to be more comprehensive detail and enable authorities to pinpoint high crime areas. But the transition proved to be a Herculean task, so much so that the FBI allowed departments to delay their full adherence to the program. Still in 2020, 21, 22, either all or some of the biggest police forces in the U.S., New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, did not provide data. There's also been problems with the data that was submitted, including the news in 2022 of major problems with the St. Louis Police Department data and more recent revelation that figures for sexual crimes provided by the New Orleans Department was wrong. In Baltimore, the police department, various news reports, put the total of 2022 homicides between 332 and 336, but the FBI data set puts it at 272. Baltimore police officials did not reply to our inquiry about the widespread reported numbers. The Baltimore Department acknowledged its numbers may not be the same as it submits to the FBI, but states in its website any comparisons are prohibited. Similarly, police departments Milwaukee and Nashville did not respond to requests about the divergence between their stats on robberies and those of the Federal Bureau. Milwaukee reported a 7% increase in robberies in 2023, but the FBI recorded a 13% decline. An FBI spokesman told the investigators it's the responsibility of each state's Uniform Crime Reports program or contributing law enforcement to submit accurate statistics to correct the existing data that are in error. Criminologists cite other discrepancies in the official measurements they use to assess the situation. While FBI stats show declines in violent categories, the Department of Justice survey reports more people are saying they've been the victims of such crimes. The Center for Disease Control figures for homicides, which have long moved in the same direction as the FBI, started exceeding the FBI's in 2020, and the gap has widened since then. I wouldn't say the FBI is cooking the books, but the data they're putting out is half-baked, said Sean Kennedy, executive director for the Coalition of Law, Order, and Security. So it's not a conspiracy but a rush job, and it's giving people a false picture. They infer something is true, and then because it's politically expedient, they don't bother correcting it. Some criminologists say there's another hidden dynamic within the crime statistics that helps explain why most Americans think crime's on the rise: the dramatic decline in arrest. Scouring FBI data, John Lott found that the Crime Prevention Research Center found that arrests for reported violent crimes in major cities fell 20% in 2022, from 42.5% in 2019, the year before COVID. The percentage of murder and rapes cleared by arrests fell to 40.6% from 67.3% in those years. For rapes, 33% to 17%, etc. It's not clear how much of this decline is due to reductions in the size of many departments. New Orleans, for example, reportedly lost 20% of its police force. The plummeting arrest rates continue to a general sense of lawlessness, a feeling compounded by a surging increase in response time calls. So, here's the link to just that. I know there's other sources you could go to, but that's the Real Clear investigation into. But it'll be an interesting debate. I'm not going to sit here. Yeah, I know the national crime victimization. We'll see. I haven't looked at the numbers recently. Latest data available is 2022. So it's hard to find those surveys too. Let's see here. But yeah, nice to save those for. But anyways, it should be a fun debate. What's up, Sparky? Super chat from Zen. Hey, haven't seen me for many years. I'm back. Yeah, herniated disc and all. So went to the doctor. I have a herniated disc. So I'm working on that. But I should be streaming pretty much every night this week. And I got a debate coming up Wednesday against economist Noah Smith. So should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Try to dig into some of the economic numbers if I get time and do a little research, get a little prepared for the debate. That debate's going to be 7 p.m. and it's moderated by Wick. What the heck's going on with that fan up there? Anyways, let's get back to talking about this Morenz guy. So I don't know if it requires surgery yet, Sparky. We're gonna try some physical therapy first, so hopefully I'll be able to get through it with that. But the topic is: has the Biden presidency been good for the country? Focused on domestic policy, foreign policy, and just in general. Or we're supposed to break it into 3 portions. So I don't think I'm debating anyone tonight. Thanks, Sparky. I appreciate it. Headline from Business Insider for the Super Chat, David. Thank you so much. Recession seems almost certain with 19 states in trouble already, experts warn. Yeah. I have to get more. Let me check. Get ready for a recession that hammers consumers. It's very high probability, Nancy Lazar told The Economist. Let's see here. We think it's a very risky economic environment. When the banks are tightening lending standards and you have clearly higher interest rates, you have a soft landing. Recession strikes an average of 10 quarters after the Fed began a rate hike cycle, but have arrived up to 16 quarters later. 19 states accounting for 40% of the national GDP have recorded at least a 0.5 percentage point increase in their average unemployment measured over 3 months. In the past, whenever that many states recorded significant increases in joblessness, there was a nationwide recession. Yeah. Now, there's stuff I got to dig into. Am I celebrating Michael Brown's birthday today? I'm not. I missed that. Hands up, don't shoot, right? Conservative Carnage says, man, being on X is crazy to see how many posts about black people committing violent crime and immigrants. It's pretty crazy, bro. So many. And the crazy rate of black gun crime versus any other race. Yeah, it's tough to talk about, huh? It's true, though. I think that there's a lot of reasons that we should look at it. I think that we've done a disservice, particularly to, there's 2 ways to look at this. You could look at it, and I've had this debate many times. You look at it from this, oh, you're focused on black criminals? How about I'm focused on black victims? How about that? Most people kill people in their own communities, and generally people live in communities with people that look like them. So actually, when you look at the statistics, black people are more likely to be killed by black people. Now, it gets a little murky. For example, you would expect Asian people would be most likely to be killed by Asians, but that's not true. They're more likely to be killed by black people. In fact, I believe that's the only outro racial category that you're most likely to be killed by in the United States. But if we can't talk about the factors that lead to black gun violence, it's really a disservice to the people that are victims of those gun violence, which is primarily black people. Now, I know a lot of people want to take it to a genetic place. I think there's room in the argument to discuss genetics. I personally don't think that's the biggest factor at all. I think the fact that you have crippling poverty in high crime areas, in communities where culturally there is such a distrust of police and glorification of gang type living and a victimhood mentality, I think it leads to predictable results. And it's a difficult conversation to have because, yes, you can be a racist and point to these statistics and then say, therefore, I don't want any black people in my community. The people of color I know that live in my community are more like me than a white guy who lives in the inner city. and granted, I live in a predominantly white neighborhood, but the people of color that are in my neighborhoods are like me. They share my values majoritarily. I have nothing against them. Same with a lot of immigrants that live here. In fact, I'll tell you a cool immigrant story here. One second. Let me grab a drink. I gotta hobble around now in my chair. These guys that own the local gas station, I don't know what country they're from originally, but they're immigrants. Always very nice. A lot of times, I obviously, as a consumer in my area, I stop at local stores, gas stations, convenience stores, etc. But it's really important to a lot of the people I take care of with disabilities that they have relationships with the community. And one of the easiest ways to build relationships in the community is to be a frequent shopper somewhere. You just get a first name basis. You know, you go into the coffee shop every day and order a coffee, you get to know the people at the coffee shop. If you go grocery shopping at the same store at the same time every week, you get to know the people that are, normally working in there. Same's true of convenience stores. If you stop in for a diet soda once a day, you get to know those people. So I've got to know the people that work in this convenience store, and they did something I thought was really cool. They bought this old rundown ball field that no one was using here in a town near here, and they turned it into a cricket field. And they're giving free lessons and equipment to people in hopes of getting enough people along that they're going to be able to start a cricket league. And I thought, to me, that's when you hear about multiculturalism, like that's the sort of diversity that I could get behind. People that come here, work their ass off, which these guys do work their ass off, are great people, are really nice, and they say, hey, there's something about my culture that I came from that I like that I don't see here. I'll try to put my own money and my own skin in the game to get people to voluntarily be on with it. So, Veda, thank you so much for the super chat. Sounds like the clinging to the Bible gun speech, yeah. I did catch that Pelosi thing. Yeah, the numbers have always been grotesque, the likelihood of a black person to kill a white person versus the other. It used to be 27-1. Now I've heard 33-1. But we can't talk about it. It's nonsensical. This is different but similar. Cricket, nope, send him back. I used to have a friend in college, Chamara. He got like some expensive computer package so we could watch like cricket games with him. We'd just get drunk and cheer when he cheered, but I still had no idea what was going on. Here, you might find this interesting on this topic. This was from, I saw this morning. I thought it was hilarious. Maybe. Yeah. Good Morning Britain today had a poll. Wait until you see how enthused they are to show you the results of this poll. This is great. Ready?
Twain shall meet, unfortunately, on this one. We do have to bring you our vote because you have been voting in the text and online vote today. So here is the result. Is multiculturalism working? Here is what you told us. 5% of those of you who voted said yes, it is. 95% of those of you who voted this morning said no, it isn't. Twain shall meet, unfortunately.
Oh, it's unfortunate we have to show you the results of this. No kidding. It's even worse in Britain than it is here. Well, I do think that poverty has something to do with it. Listen, there's two types of poverty, right? Like, I grew up in a poor area. I do. And there's crime here more than there would be in an affluent area. And there's violent crime, though it's far less common than, say, some inner city. But I think the idea of being poor, basically living on top of each other, so in high populated areas with huge amounts of poverty, I think that does tend to lead to more violence. Whereas a more rurally, sparsely populated area, I think would be different. However, there's certainly I'm not an expert on this. There's certainly absolutely a role for culture. And I said that, right? The idea that there is a culture that glorifies hatred towards the police, that glorifies victimhood, that glorifies gang-like culture, you're going to have predictable results. You know? Yeah, and crime probably does lead to poverty. It's definitely cyclical, but it probably goes more in that direction than the other. That's probably true. So, but no, I thought that poll was funny. Ooh, oops. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if 99% of people in Britain and the United States wanted to vote to like seal the border, we still wouldn't. Because the people that run the country don't give a shit what you think. Which is why I say all the time that to me the biggest issue is corruption. Your voice doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. What else do we have to talk about? Yeah, here was the talking about the economy. Change in household net worth since the start of presidency. Nominal value, that's the literal change. The blues, Biden, the reds, Trump. But when you adjust it for inflation, we're barely breaking even with Biden. Well, sure, art's a reflection of people's struggles. That's absolutely true. But it also helps influences how people live their lives. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's not just the art. It's also what we teach in academia. We have an entire society based on the idea that this country is systemically racist towards people of color and they're perpetual victims. And as such, if you're a perpetual victim, if you have your culture telling you, or if you have that being told to you by people in positions of power and influence, while at the same time your culture is telling you to glorify sort of criminal behavior because you deserve it anyways, and the police are all evil and out to get you, it's the results. Poor kids are just as smart as white kids. I remember that. Brandon Straka put something out. I'm just going, like, unless someone's got a topic they really want to talk about, I'd love someone to call in tonight. That'd be great. I'm just going through random things I've tweeted or reposted and looking at them. Brandon Straka put this out. Redlining. When was that redlining outlawed? So I could show you, for example, we're talking about redlining that was outlawed in the 70s. Now we can see the opposite of redlining. For example, there's now white lining. I could show you that there are many, at least one of the major mortgage lenders, at least a couple years ago, suggested they were going to make it more difficult for white people to get mortgages. We have all sorts of governmental programs specifically designed to help people of color and not white people. So I guess we could say 20 years from now, if there's a surge in crimes from white people, that it was because of white lining. Is that true, Lord Krillin? Is that what we would say? We have to bring up redlining in the 70s. You want to call in? Here, I'll give you my Discord channel. Oh, oops. If you have Discord, you could just call in through Discord. Yeah, maybe we'll get a caller. That'll make the show good. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'll give you 5 minutes. No problem. Just let me know in the chat when you're on there, because I'll put my headset on in case I hear you anyways. I don't have a 1-800 number. I did have a Google Voice number that you can call in on for boomers like me that used to not have Discord, but let me check my settings here. Check. Yeah. Okay, good. All right, here we go. By the way, I never know if who's this guy? M, you there? Are you Lord Krillin, or are you just someone else?
M.
Yeah, you're Lord?
Yeah, it's me, mate. My bad. I have to mute you. Your stream.
Yeah, no problem.
Echo.
No problem. Just let me know when you do it, so I could adjust your audio so people could hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I should be good now.
Yep, you sound fine. All right, what do you want to talk about?
So a lot of the comments you're making show a vague understanding of how sociological factors and socioeconomic factors create systems of poverty and like disenfranchisement within a nation, but they're very surface level, and I think that's what you're missing when a lot of these arguments come into play. And for instance, right, we live in a capitalist society, right?
Okay.
So capitalism is a system of monetary accumulation. You have land or some kind of value or service, and you use that value or service or good, land, regardless of what it is, to generate wealth and capital, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is a system of competition. You compete against your neighbors, and that's what gives it its quote-unquote freedom and fairness, is that it is supposedly, we know this not to be true, but it is supposedly a meritocracy, right?
It's not just strictly a matter of competition. For example, a rising tide lifts all boats. So, for example, if specialization that comes through capitalism allows more food to be produced and more energy to be produced, even if you are falling behind what your neighbor's doing, your quality of life could increase because the rising tide's lifting all boats. So it's not a zero-sum game necessarily where there's only $100 million to go around, and if your neighbor doubles his worth, now you're worth half as much.
True. However, we understand when you directly agree with me that redlining was a thing, right?
When did it end?
Redlining never ended.
Okay, so explain. It's illegal, correct?
It doesn't matter if it's illegal if no one enforces the law, right?
Okay, so your argument is up until today, mortgage companies are still not giving mortgages to people of color.
So here's a great example of that. I'm in the service, right? I'm in the Army.
Okay.
I use Navy Federal as my credit union, right? Mm-hmm. Statistically, over the past, I say 45 years, this is what made me very reluctant to agree with to use them as my banking service. They have given out, on average, I think 60% greater acceptance rates for loans, for whether they be small business loans, whether they be household improvement loans. In general, they're lending, right? 60% more likely to approve people who had, who lived in neighborhoods that were historically white. They were similarly with people who, I want to make sure I'm quoting this study correctly. I don't want to give you any misinformation here. But they had a very, very easily trackable history of preferential treatment towards neighborhoods that historically Black people were excluded from. So that was
why. Why do you think? Let's without even delving into the stats, let's assume that's correct. Why do you think that is? Why would Navy Federal Credit Union do that? Because they hate Black people?
I mean, in the beginning, probably.
Well, that has nothing. Like, we're not talking about 1940. We're talking about you're talking about up until today.
Let me articulate myself just a little bit. So when I say in the beginning, yes, that probably may be the case. Now you have 50, 60 years in the future where people who aren't, screaming fucking vitriolic racist. Now what they have instead is a set of codified practices that their business has been using as a model for 60, 70 years. And so if this has been a successful business model for you guys and you have no real reason to change it, why would you?
That's
And
nonsensical, because
it's
here's
not
why. Here's why. Because what businesses are going to do, they're in the business of making money. And if you had all of in the high competitive world of sort of banking and mortgage lending, the idea that there is tons of money to be made off of lending mortgage applicants money in black neighborhoods, and they're saying, we're not even going to consider it because we've always not done it, therefore it would be foolish to even consider it, is nonsensical. There would have been companies that would have stepped in and said, my goodness, this would be a huge economic boon to us. It would be very similar to things we see in competitive sports. So, for example, while it may have been a case in this country at one point that people would have said, I own a team, I don't want a person of color, once they realized that it was more profitable to them to allow people of color, and it was an antiquated view, they certainly did that, and we see the results of that. They ended up with a lot of people of color, some being the most famous people in many of the sports that we see. The same would be true of these applicants. I would compose to you that the reason that they're not lending as much to, quote, not black people, but black neighborhoods, is probably because those neighborhoods have other factors that mean that their investment would be more at risk, that they would be less at risk for property values to stay at the same rate or to increase in prices at the other places, or that those applicants would be less likely to be able to make the payments in a significant way.
So to counter argue what you're saying a little bit here, what you just stated was actually exactly what we saw. When you have a dearth of things like equitable lending opportunities from organizations like Navy Federal, things like that, you do see a competitor scoop in and take up that profitable venture, and that's where you get things like predatory lending. So what you're saying is entirely true, but what people are still doing is still thriving in the capitalist system. They see that people have limited opportunities to get equitable loans.
I don't understand what you just said there. Can you clarify? So your argument is that did happen, but they were predatory.
Yes.
So define predatory. So this is what it sounds like you're saying to me, that a bunch of people that shouldn't have gotten mortgages were given mortgages at rates that they knew they would be unable to pay back.
No.
Okay. Then I'm sorry, if you could clarify then.
So what I say is, you have people who are in an environment in which the main source for starting your own business. Ooh, wow, your chat is saying some cringy things. Anyway, my point being, you have people who are in an environment in which the main source for, quote unquote, lifting yourself up by your bootstraps, starting your own business, getting your own land to have generational wealth, all that good stuff. A very big part of that here in America is using either banks or some kind of federal program to acquire startup capital or some kind of fund investment to get that going. So, and then you have a very obvious like I said, this is a published study. I can send you some links for it here in a second, but you have very obviously discriminatory practices in these lending moments. And so you have people who have, the main sources of these programs, things like that, being denied to them, have to find some way to get it. They're not just going to let themselves starve. They have to figure out some way to survive. And you have individuals who come in and they say, hey, I'll give you a loan, but this loan will be at a significantly higher interest rate, but it's one of your few options, right? So that's what I mean by predatory. It isn't.
See, I don't believe it. Just it intuitively doesn't make sense, right? Like, so let me explain what it sounds like you're saying. So you have like a bunch of the traditional lending places like Navy Credit Union or Bank of America. These places that would be considered throughout most of the country your go-tos for mortgages. You would agree with that, right? There's what we would consider sort of the establishment type banks that generally do the majority of mortgages, right? And that's what you're talking about. These opportunities aren't given to black areas. Instead, there's other groups that have came in, and they're not as fair with their terms. So maybe a traditional mortgage rate would be like 6%, but they're going to offer you like 30% to black Americans. That's what you're saying?
Not to that extreme of a
right,
rate, but
gotcha. Yeah, I don't believe that. Then that would imply that a shrewd. Let me tell you why. Because that would imply that a shrewd company like Bank of America could see the same data that you're seeing, or the Navy Credit Union, or any of the other legitimate lenders would see the data you're seeing and saying, "Oh my God, There is an entire market of people that are left completely helpless, that are basically being lent to by these predators. And these are good people with good returns, with good property values, that we would make money hand over fist and have almost no competition, because our only competition would be these predatory companies that we would easily be able to outcompete with the rates that we're giving to traditional people. Why would none of these traditional mortgage companies have ever done that? Is it because they're racist?
Yes.
I think it's nonsense.
It's not nonsense. Okay, so I have to ask you fundamentally, right? Mm-hmm. Do you not believe people can make detrimental decisions toward their business because of their own racial biases and prejudices? Do you not believe people can do things of that nature? Is it
No, that's possible, but the actual truth of today's world is the exact opposite of what you're intuiting. Because the truth is, the biggest credit that you have in this country is appealing to victimhood and things like DEI. So any company which is why Bank of America has announced that they will be giving no money down loans for homes to people of color, particularly black people. It's every major corporation knows that there is only a positive to singing the praises of diversity, to hiring people that are more diverse, and to working with people that are more diverse, and building a clientele that is more diverse. The idea that all of this virtue signaling going on, but in secret, it's all a bunch of racists that are running all the mortgage companies, and yet all of academia, all of the media that would jump at the chance to declare racism, particularly in high institutions like this, haven't been able to break the story. There's just none of them. There's no stories being broken by intrepid journalists at the New York Times that basically everyone running Bank of America and Navy Federal Credit Union are completely racist.
So where did I get this study from if no one's putting this data out?
Okay.
Because that's my entire point.
So you have a study. Now
I have multiple studies.
Okay. Let's say you have 10. Is your argument to me that it is just an open secret, that it's just blatant racism? That's the only reason. It's just blatant racism why these mortgage companies are choosing not to lend to black Americans. And yet, for whatever reason, let me finish real quick. For whatever reason, a country where our mainstream media is incredibly, insanely focused on race, they're just not making this a story. And the Democratic Party that's insanely focused on race, just not making it a story.
Sir, so your statement now directly contradicts what you were speaking on earlier, right? So when I say that there's studies of this, and there's a historical precedent for this, and then I say these things may not be fueled by vitriolic racists nowadays. However, these things have become a standard set of practices. That's me literally admitting that people may not be personally fueled by fucking hateful moments in the present. However, they have standards and practices that have already disenfranchised people.
We already went through this circle, right? We did, because I said, no, I don't believe that, because the idea these people, businesses, multi-billion-dollar businesses, are in the business of making money, and they're going to reevaluate their practices. They're not going to not look at literally 20% of the country and the homes that are there just because, we've never looked at them before, so we're not going to do it. They're always going to be looking to expanding their business interests. And I said, so therefore it would make sense they would see, here are properties that no one's lending to, and we can make a large amount of money if we started lending to these properties. And you said, well, what happened was there were people that did that, but they were predatory. And I said, yes, but if that's the case, then the traditional companies like Bank of America would realize that that's a huge potential area for financial investment, and they would be interested in making that money and understand that they could outcompete the predators, so they would go in there. And so are you telling me the only reason that Bank of America hasn't done that is because they're racist at the top of them? And you said, yes, that's what I'm saying.
So you're misunderstanding what I mean by that, because when I say yes, they're racist, right? What I'm talking about is if you say, so you're a business and you draw up a chart of the city and you say these neighborhoods are quote unquote green zones. These neighborhoods have people who have traditionally incomes within 100,000 to higher range. They have, higher property values on average. All of these factors that you would consider when you're giving someone a business loan, right? You consider their assets and things of that nature, right? If you create zones that are green, red, whatever, and you say these are the places we want to target our business at, right? This is a standard practice that you create a quote unquote target audience for your product, for your business, for your service. And you say this is what we're looking for because we know that this produces these results. What you're doing outside of that now is risk-taking behavior, right? You would agree that as a business, you first establish a target audience for your market, and then afterwards you have things that you consider outliers that maybe you sometimes invest in if you have like extra startup capital, things of that nature. But you would recognize that most businesses have a target audience, right?
It's an interesting question. The way you're framing it, sure. So, like, if I'm Bud Light, I'm selling beer to a particular group of people. Would I potentially try to reach out to other groups? Sure. But
okay, so wait. I want to ask you a very serious question.
Okay.
Just following that that logic. What happened when Bud Light tried to appeal to another brand?
Didn't work out well for them.
Oh, that's crazy.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just like, right, if Bank of America would lend to black people, then white people would stop getting mortgages from them.
No. We're talking about the perception and backlash that came from people who had an inborn fucking vitriolic reaction to something. We're not talking about...
That's the difference there is a group that went outside their target demographic to the competing culturally opposite demographic versus a mortgage company that no one gives a shit sort of what their cultural references are. People that are going to Bank of America. It is true. I just want to be clear. Before we get this. What you're really trying to tell me right here is me, who theoretically went through Bank of America to get a mortgage for my home, wouldn't have went there if they lended you a black man money. I'd have said, oh no, they went outside my target demographic. Now they're lending black people money? Nope, I'll take my business elsewhere. That is laughable.
It's not laughable. It's something
It is.
Why do we have the term white flight then? Why is that a historic?
Because there are black neighborhoods where there is incredible amounts of animosity towards white people and incredible amounts of declining property values and crime.
Okay.
So
there's no historical precedent of black people moving into neighborhoods and then white people being in fear of their property values going down or fear of the quote unquote crime that black people bring and then moving out to the suburbs. That's not a historical precedent.
Has happened, just like that has happened. But that's not just because of the color of people's skin. It's because oftentimes crime does come, right? Oftentimes it's not just any average black person that's coming. The black person that wanted to move on their own is one thing. A lot of times what happens is these communities are designated for things like Section 8 housing and affordable housing in suburban areas, and that intuitively brings people that otherwise wouldn't have been able to otherwise move to those neighborhoods. So it's not that you're bringing someone of different skin color, it's that you're bringing someone of a different economic status, and many times there are things like increased crime rates, drug use, etc. that come with those sort of things coming into a neighborhood. Similarly, will you admit that a lot of times when white people try to move into historically black areas, they are denigrated and said that they are gentrifying the area, and so therefore they're told both ways that they have to accept if people move into their cities, it's wrong for them to want to move out. But if they want to move into black cities, that's also wrong because it's taking away culture from black people.
So you're misunderstanding what gentrifying is. It's an erasure of local culture, mate. It's not the same thing as a guy moving out into the quote unquote suburbs, right? So what we're talking about when we look at white flight versus gentrification is a perfect example would be a bunch of wealthy investors come into an area and they buy historical property that has like sentimental value to the neighborhood.
Okay.
And instead of respecting that historical value, they pave over it and they put a fucking Starbucks there.
Okay.
Now that's very generic and like metaphorical. But what I'm talking about is an erasure of the local culture there, versus white flight being people fleeing almost entirely out of fear. When I talk about that fear, it's you assign an inherent value to people coming from impoverished scenarios.
That's true.
Which is it's faulty because poverty isn't self-created; it's created by systems within itself.
That's not entirely true. The problem is you take all agency away from people that are poor, and yes, you do, right? Because you're saying that it's created solely by systems. That's not entirely true. It's certainly true that systems can be set up to put people at a disadvantage. But the truth of the matter is, you can't. Let me ask you: are you married? Do you have kids?
No, I'm sorry. I'm just reading your chat right now. I don't want to distract from this. I do want to continue on this. I don't want to go on a tangent, but you have some very fucking racist people in your chat.
I don't give a fuck. Your opinion of what people are saying in my chest is relevant. I haven't been reading what's in the chat because I'm trying to give you the dignity of listening to your conversation. But you're probably full of shit. They're probably not being racist. It's probably just you imagining shit, just like you think the people running Bank of America are racist. And you'll make excuses why about gentrification, white people shouldn't come into your neighborhood, but they should not be upset if a bunch of Section 8 housing's put in their suburban area. Now, the question I have for you, are you a parent? Are you married?
Nah.
Do you have brothers, sisters?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Would you, let's assume, do they live in an area that you feel is a pretty safe area?
Yeah.
Would you be happy if a bunch of Section 8 housing was put in and then all of a sudden open air drug use started to increase, small crime started to increase? Would that be something you were happy with?
So as a person who has lived in multiple different emotional backgrounds, right? I'm sorry, not emotional, economic backgrounds.
Okay.
I'm reading your fucking chat. This is crazy.
Hey man, I don't know what to tell you. If you can't if you can't continue the conversation with me, then I'll just let you go. It's not going to be fruitful for you to just keep saying I'm just reading your chat.
Man, hey,
okay, here's what we'll do. Tell me exactly what was said in the chat that has you so upset. Go ahead, give me the quote.
So the conflation of local culture equals pair of shoes on a wire, right? So first off, that's disrespectful. Those shoes are there to signify someone who died in a
that's bullshit. I see shoes on wires in my neighborhood. It's almost all white people.
And misusing a cultural phenomenon doesn't make the origin of that cultural phenomenon.
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit that you're super offended that someone said about shoes on a wire. It is something that tends to. Let me ask you. Let's do this. If you were going through two communities and one you saw shoes hanging on a bunch of wires and the other you didn't, if you had to take a guess where you were more likely to see an act of violence in the street, which one would you guess?
That's so fucking arbitrary, mate.
Why is it arbitrary? You know the answer, so do I.
I do know the answer.
Right.
I do know the answer, right? And the answer is it doesn't fucking matter. It's not a real thing.
No, that's not the answer. The answer is you would probably say it's just something that's distasteful and it signifies a certain type of, even if it was thrown up by someone's sister whose brother died and those shoes are up there, it's still, in your words, would signify someone being shot and killed or someone killed before their time.
I don't say anything about being shot. It's just the memorial.
I said killed before their time. Most of the time.
You said shot, and that's my entire point.
I said shot or okay. Then how about overdosed on drugs? Was stabbed to death? Was hit in a hit and run? You're not throwing shoes over the wire because your grandma died of cancer at 76, correct?
You could be. You don't know.
Okay, well that's a stupid cultural practice, and it still would signify if you looked at the data, I'm sure, and you said the people that or the communities that had shoes on wire, which is not something I've ever talked about in my life before, but I guarantee if you bore out the statistics, those communities with shoes on wire are probably more likely to have more police interactions than those without. I don't understand why that's something that you feel that it's a significant memorial, and therefore we shouldn't be allowed to talk about the statistics behind what that may signify?
No, you're drawing connections that I never stated. I was just stating how your chat is deriding aspects of culture that don't have negative connotations and assuming that there's negative shit.
It doesn't matter. It does have a negative connotation whether you want it to or not. Like, for example, for example, if I said to you, there's a community that I frequent in Pennsylvania a lot that every other street has Confederate flags, would that have a negative connotation to you?
The difference between a hate group that
No. I just asked a yes/no question. Would that have a negative connotation?
You're drawing connections that don't have
why can't you answer the question? Why can't you answer the question? Why can't you answer the question? Would that
because you're trying to simplify something that has a history of?
You're not. What you're doing is you're deflecting from the answer because you know what the answer will be, and you're not interested. Just give me a yes or no. We'll stay here. We'll stay here. If I told you of a city in Pennsylvania here that every other street had a Confederate flag, would that have a negative connotation for you?
You're comparing.
I'll just if we can't get beyond this is fine. If we can't get beyond this, that's fine. I'll ask the question again. If I told you there was a city in Pennsylvania where every other street had Confederate flags, would you have a negative connotation with that?
Oh my goodness, this man!
Why can't you just say yes? Why can't you just admit yes?
Because answers aren't yes and no, black and white.
It is that simple. When you can say yes, but I think it's different because. You could say that.
Didn't I literally say that?
No, you refused to say yes or no. You didn't literally say. I'll ask you again. Would you have negative connotation if I told you there was a city in Pennsylvania where every other street had Confederate flags?
This isn't the point you think you're making.
It is the point I think. I'll ask you again. Notice how you still can't say yes or no. You still can't say it.
Dignify this bullshit trap.
I'll ask you again. If there was a city in Pennsylvania where every other street had Confederate flags, would that have a negative connotation to you?
Oof, brother. You really think you're holding my feet to the fire here and it's really showing you don't have a material
No, it's the problem is I'll get to the answer and then I'll show how bad faith you are. That city's called Gettysburg. You know what that is?
Of course, I know the Battle of
Well,
Gettysburg.
so do you think that the woman that's the reenactor for the South that has a gift shop there, that has a Confederate flag and the Northern flag and the Betsy Ross, is she racist? Is that
Probably,
negative
yeah.
connotation? She is.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Well, that just shows that we should take a grain of salt of everything you say. Now, I would say, just like you said, oh, them saying the shoes over the line, they attached a negative connotation that wasn't there. That's exactly what you're doing with the city of Gettysburg. Exact same thing. You're literally doing what you're accusing others of. Yes. Now, you wouldn't just answer yes, no, because you're not interested in an actual good faith conversation. You're interested with arguing and trying to prove some point that's not there. I only wanted you to say, of course, Confederate flag, that would have a negative connotation. And I was going to give the example, well, sometimes there's times where that connotation might be surprisingly different than what you thought. For example, in the instance of Gettysburg, where it's a historical monument. The whole town is through
We shouldn't put up historical monuments to racist causes.
No, I disagree. I think that Gettysburg and remembering the Civil War is an important thing.
Again, we can disagree on this, sure.
But
explain to me.
We shouldn't throw shoes over power lines either. So I guess we're even, right?
If you really think a war fought over the aspect of slavery is the same as throwing shoes over a wire?
I think the idea of you getting on your high horse and being morally outraged because someone made the point that towns that have, or streets that have shoes hung over the wires symbol that there could be more gang or violence or some sort of violence there, and you being offended by that because it's a cultural practice that people have attached negative connotations, that yes, you attaching a negative connotation to a historical site like the Battle of Gettysburg and saying that there should be no celebration or remembrance of it is actually a dumber point on your side.
I firmly disagree. One of those is straight up a memorabilia towards hate speech. How can you
It is not a memorabilia towards hate speach.
What did the Confederacy stand for?
The Confederacy,
it's not hate speech.
But it stood for an awful lot. Slavery was certainly part of it.
Do me a favor. I'll go ahead and hop off your stream after you do one thing.
Okay.
Read to me the first page of the Confederate Constitution. Go ahead.
Why do I give a shit?
Okay. No, we're good, brother. That's all I need to know. They stood for a lot of things, but I won't read it out loud.
Are you denying that it also stood for that? I just said slavery was certainly one of them.
It's the most important thing. It's the first page of their Constitution.
So
you don't think that's indicative of a hate group and that shouldn't be memorialized?
No.
Okay.
I don't think that the city of Gettysburg, or it happens to be one of my favorite places to go, learning about the history of the Civil War and the toll it took on normal people in the North and South. By the way, most of the people in the South weren't beneficiaries of slave owners, right? And how all these people died on this battlefield, and there was acts of heroism and acts of disgust on both sides. And learning about that moment in our history, I think, is significant, and it shouldn't be erased. I don't think it should be. And I don't think that the woman who's a reenactor or the guy that drives the bus and tells you stories about heroic deeds of the Confederate soldiers or heroic deeds of the Union soldiers, I don't think those people are racist. And I don't think that we should hide that symbol. I don't. All right, you're out. Good call. I guess that's the end of that call. I didn't know what he kept talking about, like, your chat. I was like, what? Because I'll be straight up. I don't want people dropping N-words and stuff in chat. That's so I didn't know what he was talking about, but I wasn't reading the chat. And he could just, well, your chat. So I thought, okay, he's going to have someone said something really screwed up. And he's like, someone said about shoes thrown over power lines. I did not know that was a memorial, what that was supposed to mean. I always, around here, when I see it, you know what? Thank you, Janice. I appreciate the cheer. When I see that around here, you know what that means to me? There's some little shit teenagers that live there. That's it. That's all it means. And it's distasteful. If you have a nice property, you don't want shoes hanging over your power line. But for where I live, it's not a sign of gang violence or something. But I'd assume, I've known enough of people who live in the cities, like, if you see that thing in the city, you might want to stay out of that street, particularly as a white guy. That's it. That's what he was meant. That's really racist that they mentioned that. To get to his broader point, what he was trying to say is he was talking about the issue of redlining and how it still continues. And he didn't send me the study, but this is what I was reading when This is probably what he's talking about. The nation's largest credit union rejected more than half its black conventional mortgage applicants from December 2023. Now, there's also, you can see, Bank of America launched a zero-down mortgage payment to help minorities buy their first home. So it goes both ways. But, so I was trying to read through that. He never did send me this study that, what's going on here, that he claimed he was going to send me. But you hear about this redlining all the time. He's trying to make the argument that the reason that Bank of America or Navy Credit Union would deny black people is because they're overtly racist and they're denying to black people. And then when I push back on that, he goes, well, it's not that they're overtly racist. It's that they just traditionally have never lended to black people. So why start now? It would be a risk. And I just think that's not true. In fact, everything in culture goes the other way. If that was true, if that was legitimately happening, it would be one of the biggest stories in the country right now. Thanks, David, for the super chat. It's not gang graffiti. It's art. Give me alone. That's the truth. And that's also true when you hear the idea of white flight. I mean, it's aggravating. I think that there are serious problems to talk about. And it would be very, like, I don't know. I'm not a black person. I'm not a black man. I don't know. If I belonged to a group that was 33 times more likely to kill a member of the opposite race than I was likely to be killed by, it would suck that then I would be perceived as such. That would suck. Now, I am a man, and men are far more likely to use violence than women, or at least lethal levels of violence. Yeah, Ranger and Rogue, I thought that might be some of it too. That it's going to be harder to lend to military people. And so therefore, because there's a disproportionately higher percentage of black people in the military, it would skew the statistics. So is it fair, for example, like, this is a real situation that happened. I'll tell you a real story. I was at the playground with my son, Hank, who's 3. And I find myself a lot of times to be the only dad at the playground. Obviously, me and my wife take Hank to the playground together, but sometimes, because I'm gone at work and she's at home with Hank alone, sometimes when I get off work, she would like to have a little break. Maybe she's got to do some cleaning around the house. Maybe she just wants to go out with her mom to dinner or something like that. So sometimes I'll be like, hey, let me take Hank for like 3 hours and we'll go do our own thing. So we'll go to the park or we'll go walk around the woods or whatever. And a lot of times we'll go to the playground. And what I see, and you also have to factor in too, a lot of times it's during the day because I work weird block shifts. So like when I have Thursday off, I can go at noon to the playground. A lot of guys around here are working at noon. So when I get to the playground, if we see other people, it's usually moms with kids. So I was at the playground one day a few months ago, and there was a mom who, this is getting into another fucking area that maybe I shouldn't be, but she looked as if maybe she was going through some medical treatments because she looked a little sick, and she was bald, like maybe had been going through chemo or something. It was a very nice lady, and I was talking to her, and she had a 6-year-old daughter and like a 2-year-old son there. And my son's 3. And the 6-year-old daughter's just running all around, and the 2-year-old's a little close to mom, you know. And I'm talking, she's a very nice lady. My 3-year-old goes up this big slide, and it makes me nervous. And we're kind of joking. I'm like, oh my goodness. I get nervous. He goes up this big slide. Then he comes down it, and I catch him. Well, then her 2-year-old wanted to go up the slide. Well, she was not going to let him climb up the slide himself because he's a little too small for it. So she climbed up with him. And when he gets to the top, she's yelling for the sister, hey, can you go to the bottom of the slide and grab your brother when he gets down the slide? Because she didn't want him just scooching off and like bumping his butt or something. And the 6-year-old had nothing to do with it. And meanwhile, now this kid's like precariously on the top and he's kind of like hanging up. And she's like, no, you gotta go down the slide, but I need someone to catch you. Now, the person I am, I would have happily stood at the bottom of that slide and grabbed that little boy. There you go, bud. Great job. But I can't in today's world. Because I'm a guy. My wife could have. She could have grabbed the little boy, but I couldn't. Does anyone disagree? And I felt bad. I was going to ask her, like, ma'am, would you like me to go? But I was like, it'll just sound creepy. I didn't know how to broach the subject. I'm looked at that because I'm a guy. And you see a guy with like someone else's little kid. So he went down on his own and scuffed himself and cried a little. And I stood way back and was like, you did it, buddy. Great job. That's nowhere near the level of what we're talking about, like when serious things of like you're suspected of a crime because of the color of your skin. I understand it's a different level. But I'm just saying there are things that you could understand that it sucks, but it's reality. So many times what people want to do, particularly that want to deflect from overwhelming amounts of violence in many black communities, is it's everyone's fault but that community. And that's bullshit. It's garbage. That's redlining's fault. That's why we have increased homicides in Chicago. Redlining in the 70s. It still happens today. And you see all these studies. Oh, if you're black, you're less likely to get called back. It's all a lie. Those studies are, everybody knows when it comes to the major Fortune 500 companies, any company that's not like your mom and pop pizza store, any company of national renown, they can't wait to staff it with diversity hires. They can't wait. Yet we have to pretend to believe the opposite. Oh, if you're black, that really diminishes your chances of being promoted at Boeing. It's garbage. When it comes to state jobs, you can see that minorities far more likely to get state jobs which pay on average better and have better benefits than their private counterparts. Yeah, Larry Elder did rip this apart a long time. So I'm sorry, I was willing to keep the conversation going, but you can see how quickly it gets in the way. I thought he would have been better to just stick to the conversation with me. Once he started going to the chat, it went downhill for him. Thanks, Saiga. I appreciate it. And a lot of the stuff that you intuitively believe that you've been told is just not true. For example, we spend far less for black students per student than white students. Not true. Now, it's hard to break it down by race, but when you break it down by geographic location, inner city schools per child get way more money than areas you would assume would be more white. Now, it's true if you could afford to send your kid to private school and you're more wealthy. But if you're just looking at poor white versus poor black, yeah, material and analysis, yeah. Oh, I'm not going to get in trouble. But yeah, and then when you get to like, also I was trying to get to the point with Gettysburg was like, if someone says, to me what was happening was he was interpreting what shoelaces or shoes on a power line meant to him. That meant something meaningful to him. I don't think that means that to me or you. And so someone saying, hey, that community is more likely to have gang trouble or more likely to have violence or drug use, probably statistically true, I would guess, because more affluent communities probably have people that could get up in the power line and take it down and don't have people that are doing that, kids that are doing that sort of stuff. That doesn't mean the act of throwing the shoe up there is what causes the violence. It's just a correlation thing. I think that's reasonable to intuit. But if he had some heartfelt meaning to that maybe the rest of us didn't know, the only point I was trying to make is, well, take something simple like a Confederate flag. Sure, a lot of people could say, I find that to be negatively connotated. But you could point to situations where it's not, like here in Pennsylvania, in Gettysburg. Like, you understand. If my neighbor is flying a big Confederate flag, that might mean something completely different than if the gift shop at the Battle of Gettysburg is flying a Confederate flag. Which you understand the reason for that is like, well, yeah, this whole town makes their money off of this historical battle. And like, which, by the way, if you've never been to Gettysburg, I really recommend it. Even if you're that person that called in. I think it's a very interesting, I enjoyed my time there a lot. I think it's very interesting. And there are incredible moments of heroism of just individual stories, people from the North and the South that you hear there. It's just mind-blowing. A different time. And so much death that occurred. It's incredible. And my wife always asks, where you want to go for vacation next year? I'll be like, Gettysburg. I love going there. It's great. We took this bus tour. This guy knew everything. He was amazing. Anyways, that's the point I was trying to get, but he can't answer that simple question. He couldn't answer it. Again, not to bring it back, but this is like why I like when I debate someone like Andrew Wilson. He'll answer. He'll say, yeah, no, sure. Can I recite the Gettysburg Address word by? No, I cannot. All right, what were we talking about before that? Let's see. Brandon Straka put this video out. We're just going through some random. If anybody wants to call in, let me know. I don't mind at all. Preferably someone disagreeing with me, but you know how it is. So, Brandon Straka points out, everyone says, why were the people armed on January 6th? Why were there people that were armed? First off, they were armed very slightly. There were, 4 or 5 people that they said had firearms. None were used in an act of violence. Then there was the guy who found the zip ties there. I was told before that they were armed with projectiles and spears, rocks and flags. But why? And the reason is because one of the worst kept secrets in the country going into January 6th was every time right-wingers tried to have a rally, violent left-wingers from groups like Antifa or BLM would show up and fight them. And the police basically stood by and did nothing. That's how the Proud Boys become famous in the first place. Because you had people like Patriot Prayer in Portland that would constantly get these permitted rallies. They would go through the city to get a permit to have a protest or a rally. And then lefties would come and beat on them. And they were defenseless and the cops would just basically let it happen. By the way, that's what was happening in Charlottesville as well. And I did a whole big thing back when Charlottesville happened, looking at it, about how the police basically allowed mutual combat to occur. They ensured it so that they could paint a picture that they wanted to paint. But it was only one side that was labeled the bad guys. Even though you saw the Antifa people showing up with shields and bats. So anyways, here's a video Brendan Straka put up. And you can see what he says. He says, we'll read his little spiel here first. Everybody connected with January 6th lie machine, DOJ, FBI, Biden prosecutors, January 6th committee, federal judges, leftist media, intentionally and knowingly push the deceptive narrative. If people didn't intend to do harm on January 6th, why'd they come with helmets, goggles, pepper spray, etc.? All of these people know the answer because all of them were also a part of enabling and covering up for Antifa militant groups who spent months beating, threatening, assaulting, and terrorizing innocent people who voted for Donald Trump. There were several massive Trump rallies in D.C. leading up to January 6th. And every single one of them, left-wing violent anarchists came in to beat up old people, mothers with small children, young women, and people walking home alone. D.C. did absolutely nothing to stop this or punish anybody who did this to people. The irony of this footage is that throughout it, you'll hear Democrat Party street militias screaming that people they are assaulting and attacking are Nazis. In fact, the footage shows nearly identical behavior to actual Nazis, tormenting and assaulting Jews in the streets in 1930s Germany. By the time people knew they were going to come to January 6th rally and not be intimidated by the Democratic Party brown shirts, everybody knew that they better come prepared with defensive gear because these people attack in mobs and the police and DC law enforcement will do nothing. In fact, there's a substantial chance that if you defend yourself, you will be the one going to jail. The FBI, DOJ, federal prosecutors, and judges and media know all of this. It's infuriated the establishment that people that supported Donald Trump didn't stay silent after they were told to shut up about the election. So they intentionally misrepresented preemptive acts of self-defense as calculated acts of intention to do harm. People wore helmets, goggles, and brought pepper spray because Americans have the right to rally and protest without being attacked. And we have the right to justice when we are attacked. But Washington, D.C. has become a lawless hellhole where justice is weaponized against anybody who speaks out against corrupt establishment. So here's the video he puts up. And these are of protests before January 6th, which is his point. This is how you were treated when you showed up to Trump in D.C. to Trump rallies.
Get the fuck out! We don't want you. You got my fucking glasses! Get the fuck out! You here starting trouble. That's all you fucking here for. Stop! Don't hit him!
Problem. Antifa Black Bloc are the ones who threw bombs, mortars, and pepper spray at me and my children. My baby girl, 8 years old, nearly was hit in the face with an explosive by white people dressed up in all black, attacking me and my family. It is not the Proud Boys. And you?
In the pack! Get the pack right, loser! Goodbye, loser! Fuck your pack, bitch! Get the fuck out in 2 years. Leave him alone. Get the fuck out of here! Get the fuck out of here, nigga! Fuck your pack! Howard! You better not. Step to me! Yo, you got the cops around. Oh! Pussy, bitch! Pussy, bitch! Shoot us tonight? You see that? Yo. Did you go shoot us tonight?
Off our streets! Nazis scum! Off our streets! Nazis scum! Off our streets! Off our streets! Nazis scum! Off our streets! Don't fucking touch me! Don't fucking touch me! Nazis scum! Off our streets!
Fuck you, loser! Hey, put your hand down,
And there was hundreds upon hundreds of hours. Remember when Rand Paul was coming back and got shoved into, the mob shoved him to the ground while he was with his wife? Remember that? If any of that had happened the opposite direction, it would have been the big story in the country. But this happened over and over and over and over and over again. Everybody knows it. We all know it. I used to say it all the time. Show me. Now, I'll admit, there were times when there were right-wing people that showed up for mutual combat and were shitheads. There were. I saw it. And even though as a movement, I don't consider the Proud Boys a terrorist movement, I did see members of the Proud Boy acting in ways that was insanely stupid, showing up for mutual combat at times. That did happen. Not denying it. But show me the times when there was a left-wing rally, when there was a Hillary rally, or an Obama rally, or any sort of Democratic cause where you saw right-wingers showing up and beating people. When did that happen? All of the combat you always saw was at a Trump rally, and left-wing agitators would show up. Yeah, right, Rand Paul, he gets it all the time, and they just make fun of him. And so Straka's absolutely right. That's what was going on January 6th, and we all know it. Of course, that's what he's going to say, that man. The bill was garbage. Republicans in the House passed a bill. Democrats refused to accept it. Why? So kudos to Brandon Straka for pointing that out. This clip of Marco Rubio, which Rubio's still a swamp guy. Don't get me wrong. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled at all. They're now saying what they think they have to because once more the establishment understands, well, Trump might have a chance, and so we have to play ball with Trump and suck up to him. And it'll work because Trump's stupid, right? So you got people like Rubio out there jockeying for position and favorability with Trump. But what he says here is absolutely true, and it's worth listening. And he actually does quite well at pushing back against this quote-unquote journalist. So let's listen to this.
Immigration. If reelected, Donald Trump has said he's willing to build migrant detention camps and deploy the U.S. military to deport the more than 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country. It would be the largest deportation operation in American history. Do you support that plan?
11 million. That's an outdated. That was the number 10 years ago. We're talking upwards of 20, 25, maybe 30 million. Well, there's been almost 10 million people that have entered this country unlawfully in the last 3 years.
The question, would you support it?
The number varies big time. I mean, it's another 9 to 10 million people just in the last 3 years. The answer to your question is yes. We cannot absorb 25, 30 million people who entered this country illegally. They're here illegally. What country on earth would tolerate that? We don't even know who most of these people are. They talk about vetting them with what? They're coming from nations that don't even have document systems in many cases. Yes, we are going to have to do something, unfortunately. We're going to have to do something dramatic to remove people from this country that are here illegally, especially people we know nothing about. But 10 million, 11 million, that was the number 15 years ago. Today, it's upwards of probably...
Now, he's right on both of these points that he's making here. The first point that's worth pointing out is we have no idea what the actual number of illegals that are here are. None. They just have no. They've been using 10 million for like a decade. It's just a lie. The number is probably 3 or 4 times higher than that, dude. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't trust Rubio either. But he's right in this point, so it's worth pointing that out. The second thing is when he says, regrettably, we will have to do something. And that's the truth. Now, the country doesn't have the stomach for it. It doesn't. But it's what needs to happen. And again, when I debate people and I talk and I sound very harsh on immigration, it's not my fault, it's theirs. For example, when I say we need to stop processing basically all asylum claims, the reason is because the establishment, particularly the left, have decided that they're going to allow the abuse of the asylum system to overflow our country. That's what they're going to do. And so therefore, because they've gamed that system, now we have no choice but to end it. It's like, for example, let's say in your town, you decide that you're going to do something nice for the people of the town, and you and a couple other people come together and say, you know, it'd be nice if we put free supplies out for people that are maybe struggling. So maybe like canned goods, water, firewood, or whatever types of things like that we'll put out in the community so people that are needy can take it. And you watch over and over and over again as one group of kids keeps taking it and destroying it all. They just take it and destroy it, take it all and destroy it. So no one's really benefited. At some point, you might have to say, you know what, we have to end this program. We have to. And people say, oh, that's so mean. How could you do that? How could you end this program? Well, because a small group of people have taken advantage of it to the case where now it's detrimental to everyone. It's actually causing more problems than it's solving. So now we just have to end the program. We trusted people that they would use this as it was to be used, and now it's being taken advantage of, not just by the people coming across, but by NGOs and people that are affiliated with politics and cultural issues that want to flood this country. And so therefore we have to do this. So Rubio's actually right. No one's excited. Like, no one. Well, I can't say that. There might be some. I'm not. I can only speak for myself, I guess. I don't like the idea of having to round up illegal immigrants and detain them and send people back. I would prefer that it never came to that. I would prefer that they would have been never incentivized to come in the first place. And then once they were incentivized, when they got to the border, being told, no, you have to go back. That's what I would have preferred, but that's not what happened. And so now we have a bad situation that's going to require some sort of painful intervention in order to solve. And it seems that the best case is to round people up in detention centers and send them back. Sorry. And again, we go back to the old Herlihy boy clip, right? Let the boy take in your mail. Let him stay at your house while you're gone. Let him sleep in your bed. Let him move with you. You already let him sleep in your bed. Why won't you leave him move in with you? Same shit. They push and push and push and push. Thank you, another new account with the $5 super chat. Says, want to keep watching, but have to make dinner for the family. Keep up the good work, Rob. Thank you so much. Well, hey, the video will be available for replay, so thank you. Right, then they get to act like the good guys. That's exactly it. So Rubio's right on those accounts. Keep going.
25 to 30 million, maybe more.
Will you accept the election results of 2024 no matter what happens, Senator?
No matter what happens? No, if it's an unfair election, I think it's going to be contested by either side.
Senator, no matter who wins.
I think you're asking the wrong person. The Democrats are the ones that have opposed every Republican victory since 2000. Every single one. It's Hillary Clinton.
No Democrat has refused to concede. Hillary.
Now, this is a talking point that I love, and I was getting into it with that tacky and blue the other guy here the other night. Saying, I accept, I concede, and then keep saying, but the election was stolen, and then taking part in a process where your friends in the FBI are illegally spying on the president. Thank you, Kinji Khan, for the subscription. I really appreciate it. That's not conceding. That's conceding in name only. That's more damaging than saying, no, I'm not conceding. I want lawsuits to look into this. What Hillary, the FBI, and the Obama administration did after the 2016 election was far more damaging and non-conciliatory than what Trump did. Just because she said the words, I concede, doesn't mean that was the case. They spent 4 years of lawfare interfering in his presidency, spying on him, because they refused to concede, and they're still refusing. They're still refusing to say it's a legitimate election. Still claiming that Russia's going to interfere this time to help Trump. And he's absolutely right. Anytime Stacey Abrams says the election was stolen from me, no problem. Anytime a Democrat says the election was unfair. Remember, we have footage after footage of Democrats saying 2004, 2008, 2012, years in between. Oh, there's problems with these voting machines. Oh, we don't trust the results of some of these elections. Totally reasonable. No problem. Oh, the elections are systemically racist. People of color aren't getting vote. Joe Biden just repeated the lie that in Georgia, you now can't be handed a bottle of water while waiting in the election line. Outrageous lies. Right, Pelosi said at the Oxford Union, yes, the election was stolen in 2016. So Rubio's absolutely right. Why do you never ask Democrats that question? Because they say we concede, but every institution's on our side and we'll use it and weaponize it to go after our opponents. So they don't have to fight tooth and nail and say, actually, we don't concede, we want lawfare. They'll say, our FBI will take care of it. They'll spy on you. Our mainstream media will take care of it. They'll go after you like our lapdogs. Democrats... 2/3 of Democrat voters at one point thought that Russia literally changed vote tallies. This is from a YouGov poll. The date on this is March 9th, 2018, so 2 years after the election. Republicans and Democrats disagree on Russia's involvement in the election. Definitely true or somewhat true. This section right here. Russia tampered with vote tallies in order to get Donald Trump elected. 66% of Democrats. 66%. 2 years after the election. 66% of Democrats thought that Russia tampered with the vote tallies. So when James Sawyer says Democrats claim wasn't that the election was stolen, not close to Trump who believes votes were actually changed. That's not what they said when polled. Care to comment? Maybe it's because Democrats were putting stories out there that election machines were tampered with initially. The grid went down. Russia hacked the grid and did this and that. Yes, 2018. Correct. 2 years after the election. All right, back to our video.
Hillary Clinton conceded. Senator, will you accept the election results?
Hillary Clinton said the election was stolen from her and that Trump was illegitimate. Kamala Harris agreed.
Senator,
we have Democrats now.
Senator, she conceded the election. She said that Trump was illegitimate. She said that the election had been stolen. Kamala Harris agreed. By the way, there are Democrats serving in Congress today who in 2004 voted not to certify the Ohio electors because they said those machines had been tampered with. And you have Democrats now saying they won't certify 2024 because Trump is an insurrectionist and ineligible to hold office. So you need to ask them. I think you've had have you ever asked the Democrat this question on your show? I bet you've never asked a Democrat that question. Are Donald Trump's claims...
That's also true. I bet they've never asked a Democrat if they'll accept election results. And remember the Time magazine article that talked about a shadowy cabal fortifying the election for Joe Biden in 2020? In that, it talked about how these people were ready to have electoral challenges, and they weren't going to accept the results of the election because they knew if it was done properly, that certainly that meant they would have won. So they were ready to challenge. Remember all the rumors? Trump's removing mailboxes. Trump's doing this and that. He's screwing with the federal post office so they won't get ballots. Remember, they weren't going to accept the results of the election.
undermining Americans' confidence in democracy, given that he has not conceded the last election, and he just said in recent days twice that he won Minnesota, Senator.
I think what undermines people's confidence in the election is when you have places like Wisconsin with over 500 illegal drop box locations, when you have places like Georgia where liberal groups are paying people $10 per vote. No, but listen, what undermines elections is when NBC News and every major news outlet in America in 2020 censored the Biden laptop story, which turned out to be true, not Russian misinformation, unprecedented. Only you couldn't even talk about it on social media. They would deplatform you. People look at all this. They look at what happened in Arizona, 200,000 ballots that had the signatures didn't match. People will lose confidence, and it opens the door to this.
I have to jump in here. Senator, you voted to certify the election, and
because at that stage in the process, you have no options.
Senator, you voted to certify the election. Nothing has been censored on this program. Hillary.
It's not true. It was censored. They censored things like the laptop story. It's different. It's different when they do it. And the other difference is there was never any credible suggestion whatsoever that Russia changed tallies. None. And yet there is a lot of still outstanding significant questions about the 2020 election, such as the case we're seeing in Georgia, where it turns out that there are hundreds of thousands of ballots that we don't have copies for, the digital signatures for. Democrats being hypocrites doesn't mean that we need to be even bigger hypocrites ourselves, right? Of course not. But if the problem is that we accept that the people that control our national narrative make some moral proclamation, it is immoral or somehow disqualifying for people to question elections, it's worth pointing out the people that are claiming that moral clarity and are claiming that these are unforgivable issues do the same, if not worse, whenever it helps themselves. Holding yourself to a standard that's above and beyond what your opponents is something that's righteous and fair. But that doesn't mean that we should accept far worse treatment in the name of that, like to be somehow masochist in that sense. So for example, was there any ever censorship online and social media of people questioning the 2016 election? None. There was never. And yet there was significant censorship of people that wanted to question the 2020 election. Trump has been quite reasonable, I feel. I think that at the stage of the game, I don't think he should have expected Mike Pence to not certify the election. I think it's unfortunate that basically his advisors and the courts screwed him over. I think there were significant questions, particularly in places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia. Many of those questions are still outstanding. I think Trump had every right to be furious and to want those questions looked into. But the truth is he lost the game even before it started because he appointed terrible people around him. And he didn't do the things he should have that he promised to drain the swamp. Instead, he played footsie with the swamp and it bit him in the ass. So at the end, I feel that he should have understood that there weren't any sort of legal challenges that were going anywhere. They weren't going to allow those to go anywhere. They're still not doing it. I think he's made a mistake of the continual focus of looking at the 2020 election. I think there's an argument to be had where he could say that he thinks the election was stolen. And he's probably right, at least in even ways he doesn't think. Like, it was certainly stolen with the Zuckerbucks, with the mainstream media, social media colluding to censor stories critical of Joe Biden, etc., with the FBI getting involved, intel agencies, etc. But he should have been more forward-focused and talked about it and couched it in language of, we need to have secure elections because even if you don't think 2020 was stolen, the fact is there are a lot of questions and half the country thinks that there are significant problems and we need to make sure that our system is set up so that it's clarifying. And so those changes need to go forward because it sounds a little too whiny to focus on the past. But people make a big deal out of, oh, Trump hasn't accepted the election. And again, the difference is just this. To me, it's very, like, Trump's not the sophisticated, it's like this. Like, say someone slashes my tires. I'm not sophisticated. I'd probably do something stupid, like slash their tires back, right? But if you're sophisticated, if you're like a millionaire, you could hire a lawyer to make that person's life hell, right? Like, the first thing I'd do is call the cops. If the cops are like, we don't have any evidence, then I'd be like, I'll get them back in my own way. Now, I'd go to jail because I would get caught, and then it's like, that sucks. But the sophisticated person that hired a lawyer to make their life hell, arguably they did worse to the person that slashed their tires. They made their life a living hell and made it worse than just if they would have slashed their tires. But they did it in a way that societally we consider, that's okay, it's legitimate. That's all that's going on. Hillary never accepted the election. The Democrats never accepted the election. They still haven't. They used lawfare. They used corrupt institutions, such as the mainstream media, social media, the FBI. But on paper, it looks like, it's all on the up and up. Everything's just a series of unfortunate events. And you can see it when I debate people like Pisco. Every single time we talk about the double standard in the FBI and their interactions with people connected to Trump versus interactions connected to anyone else. Every single time it's, prosecutorial discretion. Like, for example, take a slice into an actual event occurring today. Now, unfortunately, because of more bullshit, we can't have cameras inside the Trump courtroom right now of the Alvin Bragg case that's being brought. But last week, one of the big stories was Stormy Daniels was on stage, and even people like CNN were commenting on, she's just rambling about stuff that have nothing to do about the case. Whether or not Trump had sex with Stormy Daniels has literally zero to do with these charges. And yet that's what she's on there rambling about. The quality of the sex, how Trump was acting, all of this stuff, just designed to be extemporaneous to embarrass Trump. And the judge allows it all. Go ahead, Stormy. To the point where, people were commenting it was a farce. She's, telling jokes that aren't landing, and the judge is letting it go, letting it go, letting it go. Well, today, this guy Costello gets on the stand, and he's trying to tell a story of why Michael Cohen, the star witness, is dishonest and wrong about things. And the judge keeps excoriating him to the point where he has to call a recess and says, "Are you staring me down?" Now, how is it that the same judge that's because you might say with the Stormy thing, hey, it's just one of those types of judges. He's just going to let everything go. But no, anytime it's someone for the prosecution, it's anything goes. Whatever, no big deal. But when it's people for the defense, then all of a sudden it's by the book, strict. No, we can't allow that. Blah, blah. Is it all about election denialism? No, it's periphery to the fact that I'm saying what you can see is these institutions and corrupt people within them have these sets of double standards. And so the idea of election denialism is built in. They still have denied the 2016 election, and they've done far more real shit about it. Weaponizing the FBI to go after Trump, weaponizing the media, weaponizing social media, weaponizing the justice system. What did Trump do? Complained. Then there was a riot that basically was allowed to be set up by the opposition, by the Democratic Party. And then they used that riot as an excuse to clamp down and have authoritarianism to basically weaponize our entire intel agency as a weapon against anyone who's MAGA. Getting their bank records, getting records if they were in the area at the time, even if they're not accused of a crime, if they've purchased guns, locking people up for nonviolent crimes, censoring commentary about the election on social media. Aren't conservatives wanting to change election laws now? I don't understand the question. Back to what they were, hopefully. So I know why Rubio's doing that, because he's just a swamp guy. Get a message here. Okay, I'll message him later. Here, maybe the guy called in earlier.
You missed your.
Maybe he heard Biden's speech at Morehouse. Let's take a listen to this.
Today. You missed your high school graduation. You started college just as George Floyd was murdered. And there was a reckoning on race. It's natural to wonder if democracy you hear about actually works for you. What is democracy? If black men are being killed in the street, what is democracy? The trail of broken promises still leave black communities behind. What is democracy? You have to be 10 times better than anyone else to get a fair shot. And most of all, what does it mean, as we've heard before, to be a black man who loves his country, even if it doesn't love him back in equal measure?
There you have it. More race-baiting bullshit. It's election year. Race-baiting bullshit. By the way, how's the black community doing under Biden? Great? Hey, blacks, we'll talk about you this year, but after that, shut your mouth. We're moving more illegals into your states, into your cities. Shut up. You're not really black if you don't vote for me. What a great guy. I'd said the other day, I think it was on X, I had mentioned, and someone called me out on this. I said, how much you want to bet that the majority of these protesters that you see on campuses that are being arrested get a slap on the wrist? They're not going to be looking at 4 years in solitary like the January 6 people, right? That's bullshit. I said many of them will even get settlements. They'll sue and get settlements. That's bullshit. Here's a good one that you might like. A man who's been charged with assaulting a female Capitol police officer during a violent pro-Palestinian demonstration in D.C. was sentenced to 48 hours of community service. If it was January 6th and someone punched a female police officer, you think they got 48 hours community service? All of these things happen in such rapid succession. The double standard is so blatant. But the next story just comes and you forget about it. Contemporary Compendium says, per Robert Brahms, whoever Trump chooses as VP will tell us whether or not he's got to deal with the swamp. J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, Ben Carson, knows deal. Rubio, Scott, Stefanik, Noam, deal made. Yeah, that's true. He's absolutely right about that. I totally concede. If he feels that he needs to cut a deal, that he's still in trouble with all the lawfare and stuff, then that's what he'll do. Here's a good, speaking of election integrity, this is something I thought it's flown under the radar that's worth talking about. Let me hop out of this room. Oh, no, we'll keep it. Lawfare, will there be any Republican lawyers left to ensure election integrity in November? Democrats have aggressively targeted over 400 Republican lawyers and politicians with criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and disbarment proceedings ahead of the upcoming presidential election. They've successfully jailed Peter Navarro, with Steve Bannon expected to join him shortly. In multiple states, Democrats have pursued criminal charges against dozens of Republican lawyers and politicians, including Georgia, 19 Republicans arrested and charged, 18 in Arizona, 16 in Michigan, 6 in Nevada. Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are still conducting criminal investigations, as many as 30 Republicans who have yet to be charged. In these criminal trials, Democrats are pursuing numerous efforts to have Republican lawyers disbarred. The Sourceback 65 Project has filed disbarment proceedings against more than 100 Republican lawyers, which prevent many of these lawyers from working until the proceedings are concluded. In almost every case, the charges lack merit, but they have three primary impacts: a chilling effect that discourages other Republican lawyers and politicians from helping Trump, a financial drain on the resources of Republicans who might otherwise use their funds to help elect Trump, and a time drain that physically keeps them busy during the campaign. This weekend, Arizona Democrats even crashed Rudy Giuliani's 80th birthday party to serve him with a criminal indictment. One day earlier, the same Democrats arrested John Eastman, President Trump's former attorney. His indictment and arrest are shocking because he was never involved in any litigation or hearings in Arizona and never talked to anyone during or after the election. Additionally, he's facing disbarment in California after a judge recommended his removal as a lawyer. Make no mistake, the Democrats are conducting a well-funded, well-organized effort to remove as many Republicans as possible from the November election process. Their goal is to prevent Republicans from ensuring the integrity of the election and protecting the sanctity of your vote. This is a war on the Sixth Amendment. Everyone, including President Trump and Republican candidates, deserve the right to legal representation. Democrats are working overtime to ensure that doesn't happen. Update. Some people have asked for some details about the people who've been targeted. Here's a partial list. Trump, Giuliani, Meadows, Eastman, Chesebro, Sidney Powell, Jeffrey Clark, Jenna Ellis. Well, we aren't going to go. You can see the list. And it's a great point. That's what this has always been. It's about, again, I've said this over and over with Trump. It's not just about Trump, and I have plenty of things to criticize Trump for, and I'll continue to do so. It's bigger than that. It's setting the signal up. Don't you dare challenge the establishment orthodoxy. Is there any chance whatsoever that had the election went the other way and we had a similar situation, granted, it wouldn't have been Biden in president, right? But if we would have had similar alternate electors, similar types of programs, do you think there's any chance that there's such a huge move to pierce attorney-client privilege to charge all of these attorneys? Not a chance. There wouldn't even be a chance. It's being set up to say don't ever challenge them. And it's doing that specifically when it comes to lawyers. From the trial today, Judge Merchant's pulling out all the stops to save Michael Cohen. So far today, he's already rejected an email from Cohen's former attorney that rejects Cohen's entire testimony and won't allow Trump's team to submit a document proving where Trump was during Cohen's alleged call about Stormy Daniels. In addition, they won't allow any federal election experts to testify because the problem is, and I've been reading about this, what's going on is the jury sitting here listening to this, the crime is that there was an underlying crime that was then covered up by cooking the books. The question is, what's the underlying crime? And no one said. The prosecution hasn't stated. They've allowed Cohen on the stand to say several times that there was some kind of crime. But the defense isn't allowed to provide experts on federal election law to say there was no underlying crime. Judge Merchant says, no, you can't do that. So it's allowed, perceptually, it's being smeared as if Trump committed some crime. They can't, not only do they not have an underlying crime, they can't even cross the threshold that Trump knew anything about these payments. Cohen today admitted that he committed a more serious felony than anything Trump's accused of. Cohen admitted on the stand today that he stole $60,000 from the Trump organization. It's starting to look like the entire thing was concocted by Cohen to pay Stormy Daniels and then skim off the top and make money. That's what it's looking like. And yet this prosecutor decided to hinge a case entirely on the words of Michael Cohen, who's been excoriated by judges, by Congress for lying over and over, who they now we know knew was literally embezzling money from Trump. And they let him off the hook for that more serious crime. Why? Well, Alvin Bragg ran on the promise of taking down Trump. Jonathan Turley says, these are hits below the waterline for Cohen, but also the prosecutors. They had a man admitting to a major larceny, but never charged him. They made Cohen not only their man, but allowed him to keep the stolen money. Robert Barnes says, crimes confessed by Cohen today. Perjury, lots and lots of perjury, tax fraud, business fraud, embezzlement from Trump, theft from Trump, currency structuring to avoid getting caught for all of the above. This here is a former assistant DA in Bragg's office in Manhattan. Listen to what he says about this trial.
It's hard to understand how the judge is not going to grant a directed verdict since there's no evidence that links President Trump to any record keeping whatsoever. I just don't understand it. And I don't think all of my colleagues and all the people that I worked with in the DA's office have all said to me, Eric, go out and talk about this. You have the experience to address it. And they're actually have all unanimously, whether they like President Trump or never Trumpers, have said they're embarrassed by the DA's office bringing this type of case, and it's destroyed the integrity of my old office.
There's a guy who worked in the office. Thank you so much, Ranger and Rogue, for the subscription. I really appreciate it. Destroyed the credibility. Embarrassed. Even the never-Trumpers in the office are embarrassed. He's still going to be found guilty. You understand that, right? It doesn't matter. The details don't matter. Which will further prove what a sham this is. They know it'll be overturned on appeal. They know it. They don't give a shit. It's all about hurting him during the election. Now, Cohen admits to stealing this money from Trump's organization, $60,000. Journalist on MSNBC, Lawrence O'Donnell, he's going to tell you his feelings about that. Pretty big deal, right? Let's see what he thinks about this sort of theft.
Inside the courtroom, you've been there almost every day. You have the strength of beyond mortal men. But what was worth it to you today? What did you see? What did you hear?
Well, you know, the courtroom is where I began as a writer and a reporter a long time ago. So this is a homecoming for me in terms of a workplace. The shocking thing at the end of that cross-examination, and I just can't tell you how stunning it was, because it's the thing that I was waiting for. I saw everything Todd Blanche. I've seen every minute of cross-examination. I've seen every single question he's asked. And he sat down and ended his cross-examination without asking a single question about the $130,000 that appears on the Alan Weisselberg notes about how they were structuring the payment to Michael Cohen. He asked about the $50,000 that's irrelevant to the $130,000, and that's where he very effectively got Michael Cohen to agree that yes, he stole $30,000. Later, when Cohen was asked about that on redirect by the prosecution, it didn't really sound like stealing $30,000. It sounded a lot like Michael Cohen doing the little that he could within that calculation to rebalance the bonus he thought he deserved, and it still came out as less than the bonus he thought he deserved and the bonus he'd gotten the year before.
See, doesn't sound like stealing. You try that at your job, right? Tell them that noted legal analyst Lawrence O'Donnell told you, oh no, I'm sorry, work. When I cooked the books to give me an extra $50,000 of your money, I felt I deserved an $80,000 bonus. So actually, you're stealing from me. You still owe me $30,000, even though I embezzled $50,000 from you. It doesn't sound like stealing to Lawrence O'Donnell. You see? I mean, it's farcical. All right, I gotta go to the restroom real quick. I will be right back. Now, the point is, this trial is such a joke. We've already gone through it. You saw when I debated Connor points on it, and he was like, clearly using campaign money to pay off someone that you slept with that's clearly a crime. Literally, Trump did the opposite. He didn't use campaign money. No one knows. No one knows what's going on here. No one knows the underlying. And remember, the actual thing they're accusing Trump of allegedly doing, we know Hillary's team actually did. They were given a slap on the wrist. The point I've tried to make over and over If even one of these trials is clearly farcical and politically motivated, it is a better example of election interference than any other thing that we've seen, short of the FBI and their spying on Trump, etc. illegally. One of the things that's ironic is most of the people on the left that I debate, their audience will say a lot that what I do is gish gallop. And the idea would be that I throw so many points out rapid fire that you're unable to respond. And it seems like because I have a breadth of points, even if each individual is incoherent or wrong, it sounds like I'm impressive because I'm throwing out a bunch of points. Now, I don't think that's true. I think I could defend each and every one of those points, and the problem is most of the time what I'm doing is responding in kind to what people are saying. But the general thesis of what they're saying is actually what they're cheering for when it comes to 91 federal felonies that Trump's looking at. See, what they want you to do is say, well, there's so much there, some of it must be true. And it really comes out when you talk to people like Jeb Tanner Connor. We know he missed it. And when you get into the details of any specific little ones of them, for example, we could see Judge Cannon in the Florida case of the classified documents case. Over and over and over now, she's showing evidence of the corruption of Jack Smith, including lying on federal forms and mishandling classified documents. In the Trump Bragg case that we're seeing, there was an admission that there was one tape or email or something of that from Cohen that the prosecution deleted that was possibly exculpatory evidence. Another crime. And by the way, this happened all the time with other regular January 6th defendants. It is blatant. In the Bragg case alone, Trump's looking at over 120 years in prison for a crime that they can't even describe. They can't even articulate what the crime is. And we just accept it. Well, if he's found innocent, oh well, on to the next trial. We know he did something. This is the society we live in. Guilty until proven innocent. The process is the punishment. Will people wake up to it? Will it be able to outweigh the corruption that's coming? We'll see. But when you look at the details of these cases, they can't defend it. It's still to this day why no one's debated me and had anything to say remotely interesting on the Her report. Thoughts on the pills? The pills I'm on now? I'm on a steroid and a muscle relaxer for my herniated disc here. Polls. Oh, okay. The pills I'm on are not very interesting. See you, Zen. Take it easy, man. Now Biden agrees to these debates. Actually, something I agree with Bill Maher on. I think that the DNC wants Biden to do the debates early before the DNC convention because if it's a disaster, they might pull the plug and put someone else in at the DNC. That's right. Judge Cannon is seen as a pariah. She must be terrible. Just like Alito, right? See, they say, how dare people criticize judges when the judges, even when they're blatant, even in the case of the Bragg case, Merchant, whose daughter is being paid huge sums of money by Senator Goldman, who admitted to coaching their star witness Cohen. That's fine. All of the bullshit that you see with that, that's fine. But Judge Cannon, oh my goodness, she's just terrible. We know she's terrible. We know it's terrible. Can't she see that Trump's just guilty? No, I don't think that. I'm not factoring in whether or not Trump's convicted as to whether or not that really. At this point, I will say this. The Bragg case is going so poorly, I actually think a conviction helps Trump. I really do. Because I think everyone knows that it's almost impossible to defend. I'm thinking that there will be corrupt things that occur after this that will far outweigh. If the polls are accurate and Biden's dead in the water going into the DNC, they'll replace Biden. And then it recalculates everything. It's my honest opinion. If not, then they think that they have something in the bag that will be able to win. Now, it's not a guaranteed. I still am only putting Trump at like 5% chance of winning, but that's my honest answer. I do think that there was a potential for like a classified because regardless of what you think of the double standard of the classified documents, it is true that technically Trump had classified documents, and the average person's going to say, oh, he shouldn't have had them. Apparently that's a big deal. He's going to jail. And it'll be difficult to explain to those people like, well, as president, possibly he had the ability just by having them that they were declassified, and actually other presidents like Biden has done worse and Hillary did worse. That's a tougher sell. But this Bragg case, what it really comes down to is a lawyer and a porn star tried to extort Trump for money. And it's a joke. And he's still found guilty? It wouldn't be Biden bailing out. It would be them forcing him to. The debate, all of the rules of the debate, is hilarious. Trump's a fool for accepting it. I know why he did it. Because any time that you force Biden to be on stage for more than an hour at a time, he quite literally might shit his pants. Literally. On stage. That could happen. And so you're always going to take it. If I'm against Joe Biden, I'd be like, sure, let's get him out every night. Let's do it. That would be the default effective strategy. The problem is Biden's team knows this. And so they're going to demand conditions that are incredibly favorable to Biden, such as Jake Tapper will host the debate. And there won't be an audience there. And it'll be before the normal structure of the debates. And I had said previously that every Republican candidate should be like, kiss my ass, we're not doing debates with CNN. They fed the questions of Hillary Clinton in 2016. Right, that's a face gets it, yeah. It will be literally Trump debating Jake Tapper and whoever the other lady is, Dana Bash. RFK will probably not be able to debate. I like some of what RFK says, but he's obviously a lefty that I don't like. He seems a little populist, but he would take away my gun rights. He would allow abortions up until the third trimester. That's all terrible. But in general, he's somewhat of an anti-authoritarian, which is good. I mean, I'd take him over Joe Biden, I guess, but I wouldn't vote for him over Trump. And I think he probably at this point helps Trump while the Palestine business is going on. Here's a CNN analyst talking about Michael Cohen today. This is CNN. Yeah, Biden's not going to take a drug test.
I think the revelation, though, this morning about the theft of $30,000, which was doubled because they covered his taxes, so $60,000, it came out in a glancing, unclear way on direct. It came out like a bomb earlier today. I don't know how much they can do to fix that. It just, at a certain point, it is the fact Michael Cohen did steal this money. And what makes that really so important, Wolf, is it's not as if Michael Cohen was just stealing on the side. That'd be bad enough. The problem is he was stealing from the exact reimbursement at issue in this case. So the prosecution's core argument is Donald Trump knew what that $420,000 was all about. He was totally read in on it. Turns out Michael Cohen was stealing from him within that $420,000.
Does Michael Cohen's admission that he stole tens of thousands of dollars from the Trump organization potentially open him up to further criminal prosecution?
It's a great question. The answer is not anymore because the statute of limitations has run out. But it's a very fair question to ask. Gee, folks, of the jury, they gave him a free pass. He committed larceny. It's a higher degree of a felony than what Donald Trump is charged with. Yet they gave Michael Cohen a free pass, even though he's now admitted that he stole what amounts to $60,000. It goes to his credibility. It goes to his relationship.
Huh. Get one more drink here. Yeah, they'll use it, Trump now saying, well, I want him to take a drug test. They'll say, absolutely not. This is Trump trying to get out of the debates. They're very good at setting the narrative. Trump's just sometimes shooting off the hip. Sometimes he needs to think a little more. If I was Trump, I'd have been like, absolutely, we'll do the debate. We're not having Jake Tapper moderate. We'll find 3 people on the street in D.C. to moderate. I'd trust them over Jake Tapper, Mr. Russia Collusion hoaxer. Nope, it's not going to be CNN. Sorry. Not happening. Jake Tapper could be there and Tucker Carlson will be there with him. How about that? You get one, I get one. That's what I would have done. In general, Republicans... But the problem is the Republican establishment doesn't care. They hate Trump too. So they're never going to fight back on that. Yeah, that's exactly it, Aftershock. That's what I was saying earlier. Anytime you get... Trump's angle is going to be anytime Biden's on stage, he might completely fall apart. So I'll agree to whatever if that means getting him on stage. He inflated what the alleged payments were to Stormy Daniels because he felt he was owed an $80,000 bonus. So he inflated that and pocketed $60,000 himself. Face, I think's what happened. Now, unless I find someone to debate here or something to keep going, probably wrap it up here by 9. No, it's a little after 9. So my options tomorrow are, I should be doing some prep work for this debate. I will have to give my opponent some credit for actually using detailed economic analysis to try to make his point. Like, he'll point to data. That data is bullshit. But he'll point to data, right? And it's like when I debated Econoboy. Well, the numbers say, and you can get the numbers say, the numbers are always revised downward 3 months later. The MMT people are so good at constantly, if we just spend more here, the spending here was good, the spending here was good. Yeah, inflation was regrettable, but it was inevitable. So I should, because I know the numbers are shit, I should look into them. Because I know that'll be a big part of this debate. And it would look more credible for me if I actually dig into those numbers. I have a little more of an offense going in on that framework of it into this debate Wednesday. So I might do some of that tomorrow. But maybe not. I do have to go into work for a little. And Old School, thanks for the super chat, says, Rob, I'm so glad you're highlighting the lack of federal charge. I'm going crazy wondering why everyone isn't mentioning the violation of the Sixth Amendment. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely true. These charges have been bogus. Every one of them have been bogus from the get-ground. Every one. I was trying to see if there's anyone I could fight with online. I don't see anyone. Oh well. Other than that, I was trying to reach out to some lefties to try to do some show that I'm trying to do, where I'm trying to set up like a weekly show with the left-winger. It'd be sort of Hannity and Combs-like. I think maybe the way I'll do that is set it up so it'll be a different left-winger every week. We'll see. I just need to get my shit together and get a day where I could like take care of stuff like that. But I would like to do a big show this week. Like an 8-hour show at some point with a bunch of guests. I don't know if that I'll be able to schedule it in enough time for this week. So maybe that's something, unfortunately, it'll have to be in a week or two. But it is something that I'm looking to do. I did talk to John Ward, did message me. Could do tomorrow if it's not too soon. I'm doing Trump trial streams 2 to 5 p.m. I have some time in that range tomorrow. Let's see, tomorrow. Yeah, maybe tomorrow around 2 p.m. Look for me. I should be on John Ward's show. Now, there is a chance tomorrow, supposedly in the morning, the judge is going to decide whether to basically drop the charges unilaterally. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know exactly what the term is, but it's basically there are ways the judge could say the prosecution has failed in their case so much so I'm not even going to put it to a jury. That the judge is going to be ruling on that dismissal tomorrow morning. He will not allow that, obviously, but yeah, Aftershock, I'll hit you up, man. I will, for sure. We'll try to get something set up. My idea is it's not really a debate with a moderator. It would just sort of be like I bring a topic and then the lefty brings how many topics they want and we go for 2 hours. As long as I get to talk about the topic I want, fine. And it doesn't have to be a debate. It might be something we agree on. It could even be like, what'd you think about the new X-Men movie or some shit? I don't care. But that was the idea. Okay. Yeah. I'll get in touch after Chuck. I thought maybe I'd get like someone from the Crucible, like Andrew would maybe come on, or Jim Bob, and then maybe I could get Wick would do it. Maybe I could talk to John Burke. I don't know. I'll reach out to some people, but wanted to try to do sort of a bigger stream like that because I felt bad that I haven't been putting out a lot of content. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, 1 or 2 hours per guest. So, getting ready for the big 24-hour stream before that comes up. So, all right. If anyone wants to send me any economic data or people that they think would be interested for me to look at regarding economic studies or crime studies, how crime really was. I know AJW's done some, Actual Justice Warrior's done some really good stuff on the crime stuff. So I don't know if he has a link of where the documents he had that he was looking at. But anything like that I have time to read while I'm sitting at work tomorrow, let me know. I got some channels and stuff I check out myself. So Richard Ojeda, I don't know who that is. Sure, I'd debate him. Yeah, thanks, James Sawyer. Yeah, I think I would like it. I think it'd be fun. So, hope you enjoyed it today. Remember, I'm still putting out every day around noon on YouTube. I'm putting out a smaller video. Sam Cedar and Pacman, I've reached out to them in the past. Haven't got any. I would love to debate them. But, alrighty, everyone. Let's see if there's anyone to raid on Twitch at least. Sorry, I actually prefer when I can streaming a little earlier here because what I really like to do is, I know people get tired of this shit. I know they get tired of hearing this, but I really like to tuck my little guy into bed, particularly if he's getting to the age where you could read to him and stuff. So it's tough coming up here this late, I feel. So a little earlier works best for me.
This is really depressing.
Don't do that. Let's see. Lecture fan. Yeah, let's do that. Looking good. All right, let's see. Alrighty. Enjoy the Rate of Lecture Fan. I should be on tomorrow. Check for me around 6 to 8 p.m. Should be. Oh, remember, around 2 p.m., John Ward. Contemporary Compendium, $5. Thank you so much. Says, gotta head out. Take care. Thanks for all you do for us. No problem. Thank you all. You all are the best. Sorry I'm not putting out as much content as I once was, but I'm trying to get back there. Hopefully, I start to get some bigger debates. I think I got a chance here. I don't know how big this Noah Smith economist guy is, but I'm excited to debate someone competent. I think it'll be fun. Looking forward to it. And it's a topic I like, so it should be good. So, all right, I'll catch you all tomorrow. Look for me around 2 p.m. Hopefully I'll be on with John Ward. Thank you so much, everyone. And as always, have a good one.